There are nights when the heart feels heavy, when the mind refuses to rest, and the silence of the room only magnifies the noise inside of us. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, remembering conversations that did not go as you wished, worrying about tomorrow's weight, or simply feeling the ache of being human. Perhaps you know this feeling, that moment when time stretches endlessly, and even though the world is quiet, your inner world stirs restlessly. And yet, within this restlessness lies a doorway. Buddhism reminds us that even the most ordinary moment, even the tired sigh at the end of the day, can become the beginning of awakening. If this message resonates with you so far, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you feel gently called to do so. Before we begin, I invite you to comment below your current time and country. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Now, let us walk together, slowly, gently, into a path where growth is not about chasing a perfect version of yourself, but about returning to the essence that was never broken. Each day is a quiet invitation, not a command, not a demand, but an opening like the soft glow of dawn after a long night. The Buddha once said that the mind is luminous by nature, only obscured by passing clouds of thought and habit. When we wake each morning, we are given the chance to see through those clouds, to brush aside the accumulated dust of yesterday, and to rediscover the clarity that has always been waiting within. Growth in the Buddhist sense is not dramatic, not a sudden leap into greatness, but a return, again and again, to this quiet center. It is the art of remembering yourself with compassion. In our modern lives, many chase after self-improvement as though it were a race. We set ambitious goals. We measure progress with numbers. We compare our pace to others. And when we stumble, we feel defeated. But the path of mindfulness whispers a different truth. You do not need to become someone else in order to be whole. You do not need to force yourself into transformation through pressure. Instead, each breath, each small choice, each intention carried gently in the heart, becomes a step on the path of awakening. Like the growth of a tree, which happens silently and almost invisibly, your evolution does not need to be loud in order to be real. Imagine a morning when you awaken not with the rush of alarms and the immediate pull of obligations, but with a moment of stillness. You open your eyes slowly. You feel the weight of your body against the bed. You hear the faint rhythm of your breath. In that pause, you are already practicing Buddhism. You are observing, without judgment, simply being with what is. This is the foundation of transformation awareness. Without awareness, we repeat old patterns endlessly. With awareness, we can plant new seeds. The way you begin your day, the way you set your heart in motion at dawn, determines much of what follows. If the first moments of waking are consumed by anxiety, by rushing, by comparison, then the rest of the day often reflects that energy. But if you treat the morning as a sacred threshold, as monks treat the ringing of the bell, then you step into the day with clarity. In Buddhist monasteries, mornings are not hurried, they are intentional. A single bow, a single breath, a chant whispered into the cool air. Each act is infused with meaning. We too, even outside the monastery walls, can honor the morning as the soil in which the rest of the day will grow. The Buddha compared the mind to a garden and each thought to a seed. What you water in the first hour of your day tends to bloom throughout its unfolding stays. If you water distraction, the day becomes scattered. If you water compassion, the day flows with kindness. If you water clarity, then even challenges are met with a calm strength. To build a morning that builds you is to choose carefully what you allow into your awareness when the day is still new. This is why growth does not come through pressure. Pressure often hardens the soil, making it resistant to change. Alignment, on the other hand, softens the soil so that seeds can take root. To live intentionally is to remember that you are the gardener of your own inner world. No one else can tend to it for you. And yet, you do not need to control every detail of the weather. You only need to keep returning, gently, to the practice of care. So let us begin this journey together, not with the heavy expectation of becoming perfect, but with the lightness of planting one seed at a time. As Zen Master Dogen once said, enlightenment is intimacy with all things. When you wake in the morning, when you sit quietly with your breath, when you notice the world unfolding without rushing to grasp it, you are already touching enlightenment. Every small act done with presence becomes sacred. And so, as you listen tonight, let this truth settle into your heart. You are not broken, and you do not need to be fixed. What you need is to return. Return to your breath. Return to your body. Return to the quiet strength of being here. Now, in that returning, you will discover that self-improvement is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you have always been beneath the noise. When the first light of morning slips through the curtains, it is easy to overlook its quiet invitation. Most of us are accustomed to waking with urgency, already rushing into the next obligation before our bodies even leave the bed. Yet Buddhism teaches that the very first breath we take upon waking is not a trivial moment, but a doorway into shaping the entire day ahead. In that breath rests the chance to plant seeds of peace or seeds of chaos, seeds of calm, intention, or restless distraction. Just as the farmer knows the first planting determines the harvest, so too do our first thoughts and actions set the tone for everything that follows. Consider the image of a lotus rising from the mud. It does not burst suddenly into bloom. Instead, it unfolds slowly, guided by light and by patience. Your morning is that unfolding. If you wake and immediately grasp for your phone, flood your mind with notifications, and hand your attention over to the outside world, it is as though you are throwing stones into the still pond of your mind before you have even seen your own reflection. The day begins fractured, unsettled, already dictated by demands beyond your control. But when you allow yourself to pause, to open your eyes softly, to breathe into the silence, you create the conditions for the lotus to rise without disturbance. In Buddhist practice, mornings are treated as sacred thresholds, Monks begin with silence. Sometimes a simple bow, sometimes the gentle sound of a bell, not to fill the space but to awaken presence. The invitation is not to accomplish, but to align. You, too, can embrace this wisdom by honoring those first minutes after waking as precious. Sit quietly before the world intrudes. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the texture of your thoughts, the sensations of your body still heavy with sleep. Even a single mindful minute can shift the course of your entire day. The Buddha often spoke of seeds in the storehouse consciousness, teaching that every thought and action waters something within us. The first hour of your day is fertile soil. If you water agitation, you will likely carry agitation into your work, your conversations, your choices. If you water clarity, you will find yourself grounded even when challenges arise. This does not mean that your day will be free of difficulties, but it does mean that your mind will be steady enough to meet them with grace. There is a story from the Zen tradition of a student who asked the master how enlightenment could be practiced in ordinary life. The master replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The student, frustrated, insisted that there must be more to it. The master simply said, "When you wake, just wake." This story captures the essence of mindful mornings. Awakening does not need to be filled with ritual or burdened by complexity. The true practice is to actually be awake, to inhabit the moment fully, to taste its simplicity before rushing to the next thing. When you treat morning as a sacred space, you reclaim your freedom. Instead of being pulled into the frantic current of tasks and responsibilities, you create a still pool where clarity can take root. You remind yourself that you are not merely a machine to accomplish tasks, but a living being whose state of mind matters deeply. This simple shift changes the quality of your entire day. Imagine the difference between a house built upon a solid foundation and one built hastily on unstable ground. The same is true of your mornings. If the first stone is laid with care, the rest of the structure has strength. Of course, modern life will often tempt you to rush. Deadlines, alarms, family duties, all of these tug at you the moment you open your eyes. But Buddhism reminds us that freedom lies not in avoiding these responsibilities, but in how you meet them. A single pause before entering the storm gives you the clarity to respond rather than react. It is not about making your morning perfect. It is about beginning with intention. Even if you have only 5 minutes, those 5 minutes can be holy when you choose to use them with presence. Perhaps you begin with breath, allowing the air to enter deeply and leave slowly. Perhaps you stretch your body, acknowledging the gift of movement. Perhaps you open a book of wisdom, even if only to read a single line, and let that line guide you through the day. These are not mere routines. They are quiet declarations of self-respect. They say to the world, "Before I give my attention away, I will tend to my own soul." In this tending, you find a strength that no external circumstance can easily shake. The Buddha spoke of right intention as the seed of right action. When your mornings are guided by intention, your actions naturally follow with more ease and focus. You do not stumble through the day at the mercy of chaos. Instead, you walk with purpose, carrying within you a compass that continually points toward peace. This is how self-improvement truly unfolds in Buddhism. It is not a dramatic overhaul, but a gentle returning, day after day, to the simple practices that keep you aligned with your true self. Imagine waking tomorrow and choosing to treat the first 15 minutes not as wasted time, but as sacred. You rise, breathe, notice, and move gently. You water seeds of patience instead of stress, clarity instead of confusion. Then, when challenges inevitably come, a difficult conversation, a delay, a disappointment, you are not swept away. The roots of your morning practice hold you steady, like a tree that bends in the wind but does not break. You remain grounded. This is the power of beginning with awareness. It may seem small, even insignificant, but, as the Zen saying reminds us, little by little, one travels far. A mindful morning does not guarantee that the day will be easy, but it ensures that you will meet the day with strength, presence, and gentleness. And in time, those small acts of presence accumulate into profound transformation. So, as you prepare to rest tonight, consider the way you wish to meet the morning. Not with dread, not with distraction, but with quiet reverence. Let the first light remind you that you are alive, that each breath is a gift, and that every dawn carries within it the chance to begin again. In this simple recognition, you align with the deepest truth of Buddhism. Awakening is not found somewhere far away. It begins right here, in the ordinary miracle of your next breath. There is a gentle strength in routine, not the kind that binds you with rigidity, but the kind that anchors you when the currents of life threaten to sweep you away. In Buddhist practice, a morning ritual is less about adding tasks to your day and more about creating a container in which peace and clarity can grow. Think of it as tending a flame at dawn, ensuring that the first light you carry into the world is steady, not flickering. A ritual, no matter how small, signals to your heart and mind that you are beginning with intention rather than being tossed into the day without direction. When you first rise, your body and mind are like fresh soil. What you plant in those moments matters deeply. Imagine sitting quietly, allowing your eyes to adjust slowly instead of rushing toward brightness. You notice the coolness of the air, the texture of your sheets, the subtle rhythm of your breathing. This act of noticing, simple as it seems, is already a form of meditation. It reminds you that awareness is not something reserved for temples or formal practice. It can be woven into the fabric of ordinary moments. From this stillness, you might allow your body to awaken through gentle movement. It does not need to be strenuous. A few slow stretches, a mindful walk across the room, or even raising your arms to the sky in gratitude can be enough. Movement reconnects you with the body, grounding you in the present and reminding you that this vessel of flesh and bone is the very ground upon which your practice rests. In Buddhist teachings, the body is not an obstacle to awakening, but a precious support. To care for it with kindness each morning is to honor the path itself. Once the body has been stirred, turn your attention to nourishing the mind. This does not mean flooding it with information or tasks. Rather, It is about offering it something meaningful. Read a short passage from a spiritual text, even a single line, and let it echo within you. Listen to music that softens the edges of your thoughts. Write a few reflections in a journal, not to produce something impressive, but to let your heart spill gently onto the page. Or simply sit in silence, repeating an affirmation or prayer that reminds you of your true nature. These acts, small as they may appear, have the power to shape the quality of your awareness for the entire day. The Buddha often emphasized the principle of right effort. It is not about striving endlessly, but about directing your energy wisely. A mindful morning ritual embodies this teaching. You do not need to design an elaborate routine that leaves you exhausted before the day even begins. What matters is the sincerity and intention behind the act. Even 5 minutes of genuine presence will carry more power than an hour of going through the motions without awareness. Consider the image of laying the first brick in the foundation of a home. If the brick is placed carefully, with balance and alignment, the structure that rises upon it will be strong. If it is placed carelessly, the walls may lean and crumble. Your morning is that first brick. When you choose to begin with clarity, the rest of the day has a chance to rise with strength. And when the inevitable difficulties come, as they always do, you will find yourself less shaken, more grounded, because you started from a place of centered presence. Many people believe they do not have time for rituals, that mornings are already too full. Yet Buddhism reminds us that it is not about the length of time, but the depth of intention. You can spend a minute lighting incense, bowing, or simply breathing deeply, and that minute will ripple through your entire day. What matters is not how much you do, but how fully you inhabit the doing. A mindful sip of tea at dawn can be more transformative than an hour of distracted activity. Zen stories often illustrate this truth. One tale tells of a monk who swept the courtyard every morning, slowly and carefully, even when it seemed spotless. A passerby once asked him why he bothered, and the monk replied, "I do not sweep to remove the leaves. I sweep to sweep." In the same way, your morning ritual is not about achieving something external. It is about cultivating the inner posture of presence. Whether you sweep, breathe, stretch, or write, the act becomes sacred when done with full attention. Over time, these small rituals weave themselves into your being. They become less of a task and more of a rhythm, as natural as the rising sun. You may find yourself looking forward to the quiet space before the world demands your attention. You may notice that your mind feels clearer, your heart more open, your steps more intentional. This is the quiet transformation Buddhism speaks of, not a sudden leap, but the steady unfolding of awareness, moment by moment. When you step into the world after such a beginning, you carry with you a certain quiet power. Your words are softer, your actions more deliberate, your presence more grounding to those around you. You find yourself less reactive, more responsive, less rushed, more aligned. This is not magic. It is the natural consequence of choosing to honor the morning as sacred. So, as you reflect tonight, consider what small ritual you might bring into your next dawn. It does not need to mirror anyone else's practice. It only needs to feel authentic to you. Ask yourself, what nourishes me? What brings me peace? What reminds me of my true nature? Then let your morning unfold around that. Perhaps it is a stretch, a prayer, a quiet breath. Perhaps it is sitting by the window and watching the light change. Whatever it is, let it be infused with presence. In this way, you do not just build a morning, you build yourself. You shape the conditions for your mind and heart to thrive. You align with the wisdom of the Buddha, who taught that right intention leads naturally to right action. And with each morning begun in this way, you strengthen the foundation of a life lived with awareness, clarity, and compassion. The world has grown accustomed to chaos in the earliest hours of the day. For many, the sound of an alarm is not an invitation to life, but a command to rush. Phones light up with messages. Emails demand answers. And minds leap into 1,000 directions before the body has even found its balance. This is what modern mornings have become for most: a storm of obligations crashing against the fragile stillness that should be the foundation of the day. In this rush, people mistake busyness for progress. And by the time the sun has risen, the heart is already exhausted. It is no surprise that so many carry the weight of stress long before they step out of their homes. The brain jumps frantically from one thought to the next. What must be done today? What did I forget yesterday? Who is waiting for me to respond? The endless stream of tasks, goals, and expectations begins to feel like juggling dozens of fragile objects at once, knowing that eventually something will fall. And when it does, frustration and self-blame often follow. Buddhism, however, invites us to pause and see the truth more clearly. It is not life itself that overwhelms us, but the way our attention is scattered across too many directions at once. There is a concept in Buddhist teaching called ekaggata, often translated as one-pointedness or single-minded focus. It describes a state in which the mind rests fully on one object, undistracted, whole, and complete in its attention. Imagine pouring water into 100 tiny cracks in the earth. It vanishes quickly, absorbed and lost. Now imagine pouring that same water into one vessel. It gathers, it deepens, it can sustain. This is the difference between a chaotic morning and one guided by intention. When your mind attempts to hold 100 priorities at once, your energy is drained. But when you begin with clarity, with one direction, the energy gathers and becomes powerful. Consider the difference between waking up and thinking, I have 10 things I must finish today, versus waking with the intention, today I will remain calm, or today I will act with kindness. In the first case, your mind is already fragmented, scattered before the day even begins. In the second, you give your heart a compass. You may still face the same tasks and obligations, but they are now held within the container of a guiding intention. It is like entering a dense forest without a path. Every tree looks like an obstacle, every step uncertain. But with a clear trail, the journey becomes steady, even if the terrain is rough. The Buddha often compared the mind to a wild elephant, powerful yet unruly when left untamed. In the same way, an undirected morning mind charges from one worry to another, exhausting itself in the process. But when given a rope of mindfulness and an anchor of intention, the mind grows steady, calm, and capable of great strength. What might seem like a small act, choosing a single intention at the beginning of the day, becomes a profound discipline that transforms how you meet everything that follows. Think of the many mornings when the first instinct was to check your phone, to read the news, or to dive into emails. Notice how quickly your state of mind shifted, how easily irritation, distraction, or anxiety entered. Then think of mornings when you began with something simple, a breath, a stretch, a word of gratitude. The difference is not subtle. One leaves you pulled in every direction. The other gathers you inward, centered. This is the wisdom of ekaggata. It is not about controlling the world outside, but about focusing the world within. Zen stories often remind us of the danger of scattering ourselves too thin. One parable tells of a man chasing 2 rabbits at once. In his haste, he catches neither. The lesson is clear. A divided mind accomplishes little, while a focused mind accomplishes much. Modern culture often celebrates multitasking as a sign of efficiency. Yet Buddhist wisdom points in another direction. Multitasking scatters, mindfulness gathers, and what is gathered becomes strong. When you begin the day with too many goals, you may feel busy, but not truly fulfilled. You check boxes. You move quickly, but inside, there is no sense of progress, only exhaustion. But when you allow yourself to begin with clarity, even one act done with full attention carries a deep satisfaction. Imagine cooking breakfast. You can rush through it, distracted, already thinking about meetings and errands, barely tasting the food. Or you can cook with presence, noticing the colors, the aromas, the warmth. The meal is the same, but your experience of it is transformed. This same principle applies to the whole of your morning. The practice of focusing on one intention each day does not mean you ignore the rest of your responsibilities. It means you bring a thread of continuity into everything you do. If your intention is calm, then even when answering emails, calm guides you. If your intention is kindness, then even in traffic, kindness shapes your response. One clear intention weaves through the day like a golden thread, holding the fabric of your life together. Without it, the fabric frays and unravels. There is also a deeper freedom in choosing one intention rather than juggling dozens of expectations. In doing so, you acknowledge that life cannot be controlled or perfected in every detail. You accept that what matters is not how much you accomplish, but the spirit in which you move through what arises. Buddhism calls this living in alignment rather than pressure. Pressure demande constant achievement, leaving you weary. Alignment asks only that you act from your true center, leaving you whole. So, tomorrow, when you open your eyes, resist the urge to be swept into the noise. Pause. Ask yourself one simple question. What is my intention today? Do not overcomplicate it. Do not try to fix your whole life in a single morning. Instead, choose one clear direction. Perhaps it is patience. Perhaps it is focus. Perhaps it is compassion for yourself after a difficult week. Hold it gently in your heart. Let it become your compass. And as the hours unfold, when distractions try to pull you away, return to that compass. This is the discipline of a mindful morning. It does not erase challenges, but it transforms the way you carry them. The world may still be chaotic, but within you, there is a point of stillness, a clear path through the forest, and that is enough to change everything. When you hold too many goals in your heart at once, it is like trying to carry water in your hands. No matter how tightly you try to grasp, it slips away between your fingers. This is why the Buddha encouraged simplicity, not because ambition is wrong, but because clarity is stronger. The power of one intention is greater than the weight of a dozen scattered desires. Each morning, you are offered the chance to choose that one guiding star, the compass that quietly directs your energy. Think of a forest without a path. Every tree looks like an obstacle. Every direction, uncertain. You wander, unsure where to place your next step, growing weary before you have traveled far. Now, imagine the same forest with a clear trail beneath your feet. You may still face hills and uneven ground, but you know where you are going. That is what a single, meaningful intention gives you direction. It turns the chaos of possibilities into a journey with purpose. It does not have to be complicated. One day, your intention might be, today, I will remain calm. Another day, it might be, today, I will speak kindly. Or perhaps, today I will focus on finishing one task with full attention. These are not grand declarations. They are seeds. A seed looks small, almost insignificant, but given the right soil and care, it grows into something vast. The same is true of intention. One seed planted in the morning can shape every action that follows. In Buddhism, intention is not a thought you force, but a direction you embody. It is not about repeating words mechanically, but about carrying them gently, like a lantern that illuminates your steps. When distractions arise, and they always do, intention brings you back. It whispers, remember where you are going. Without it, you may drift aimlessly, pulled by every wind of circumstance. With it, you return again and again to what truly matters. Consider how much of daily stress comes not from the tasks themselves, but from the feeling of being torn in too many directions. You are answering a message while thinking about a meeting, cooking a meal while worrying about tomorrow, speaking with a loved one while distracted by the weight of unfinished work. In every moment, part of you is missing. But when you hold one clear intention, your mind begins to settle. The noise quiets. Even if you are busy, you are no longer fragmented. You are whole. Zen teachers often describe this as becoming like a beam of light. When light scatters, it illuminates broadly but weakly. When focused, it becomes powerful enough to cut through darkness. In the same way, Your energy, when divided among many trivial pursuits, feels diluted. But when concentrated into a single intention, it grows luminous, capable of real transformation. One kind word, spoken with full presence, carries more weight than a dozen distracted conversations. One mindful action, performed with care, changes your day more than 20 rushed tasks. There is a story of a monk asked how he managed to remain peaceful while performing endless chores in the monastery. His answer was simple: when I sweep, I sweep. When I cook, I cook. His intention was always to be fully present in the task before him. He did not divide himself between past regrets and future worries. He poured his whole being into the moment. That is the essence of living with one guiding intention. Of course, there will be days when distractions are strong, when you forget the intention you set at dawn. This is natural. The mind, like a river, sometimes floods with thoughts. But even then, the practice is not lost. When you remember, you return. Each return strengthens the habit, like muscles growing through repetition. The beauty of intention is not in perfect consistency, but in the gentle practice of coming back. Imagine carrying the intention: today I will remain calm. In the morning, it feels clear. Then, perhaps in traffic, irritation rises. For a moment, the intention is forgotten. But then you remember. You breathe. You soften. Calm returns. Each time you return, you carve a deeper pathway in the mind. Over weeks and months, calm becomes more natural, more accessible. This is how transformation happens, not in sudden leaps, but in countless small returns to your chosen direction. What makes this practice so powerful is that it aligns with the truth of impermanence. The day is unpredictable. Circumstances shift. People act in ways you cannot control. Plans unravel. But intention is not about controlling outcomes. It is about guiding your response. You cannot decide how the world will unfold, but you can decide how you will walk through it. With intention as your compass, you remain steady even in uncertainty. Think of the sea. Waves rise and fall endlessly. You cannot stop them, but with a compass and a steady hand on the wheel, you can sail through. Intention is that compass. It does not calm the sea, but it helps you navigate. Without it, you drift endlessly. With it, you move toward a destination. Even when storms appear, there is also a quiet joy in this practice. Setting too many goals often breeds frustration. You accomplish some, miss others, and end the day feeling inadequate. But when you hold one intention, every small act aligned with it feels like success. If your intention is kindness, then one gentle smile, one patient word, one moment of listening deeply, each fulfills your purpose. You go to bed, not burdened by unfinished checklists, but lightened by knowing you lived in alignment. Rumi once wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." A single intention allows you to do this. It gives you permission to release the pressure of endless achievement and instead dwell in the beauty of alignment. You no longer measure your worth by how much you did, but by how deeply you showed up. So when tomorrow comes, do not overwhelm yourself with 10 resolutions. Choose one. Hold it softly in your heart, not as a command, but as a reminder. Let it guide your steps like a lantern in the dark forest. Return to it when you forget. Begin again when you lose your way. Over time, you will find that this one clear intention accomplishes more than 50 scattered efforts. It clears the noise. It focuses your energy. It brings depth to your day. This is how Buddhism invites us to live, not through the pressure of perfection, but through the clarity of presence. And it begins not with grand declarations, but with the simple courage to say, "This is what matters to me today. This is the direction I choose." There comes a time in nearly every life when the days begin to feel like a repeating loop, a pattern that unfolds with such predictability that you can almost hear its rhythm before it begins. You wake with low energy, carry yourself through the same routines, react to situations in the same familiar ways, and end the day feeling strangely unfulfilled. When this happens again and again, many people conclude that something must be wrong within themselves. They whisper words of blame, lazy, weak, broken. Yet Buddhist wisdom reminds us that the truth is gentler. You are not broken. It is your patterns that weigh you down. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from who we are, but from what we habitually do without awareness. These unconscious habits form invisible chains. We repeat them because they are familiar, even when they no longer serve us. Perhaps you begin every morning by scrolling through your phone, flooding your mind with noise before you have even touched silence. Perhaps you react with irritation whenever someone interrupts you, even when patience might bring more peace. Or perhaps you fill every empty moment with distractions, leaving no space for stillness. These loops are not signs of failure. They are simply patterns that can be interrupted, if only we recognize them. The practice of breaking patterns is not about punishing yourself into change. It is about meeting yourself with awareness and compassion, and choosing a new rhythm. Imagine a wheel turning in the same grooves over and over, carving them deeper each time. It may seem impossible to change its path, yet if you gently guide it, even slightly, it begins to carve a new trail. The first change may be small, but with repetition, a new path is formed. This is where the Buddhist teaching of dependent origination, or pratitya samutpada, offers profound insight. Nothing arises independently. Every thought, every reaction, every emotion is the result of conditions. Your anger does not appear from nowhere. It is linked to a habit of thought, a trigger, an expectation. Your exhaustion is not random. It emerges from choices about rest, activity, and energy. When you see that your suffering is the product of conditions, you realize that, by gently shifting one condition, you can alter the entire experience. Suppose your pattern is to reach for your phone the moment you wake. Tomorrow, you might choose instead to sit quietly for 2 minutes before touching it. That small change breaks the automatic loop. Or suppose your pattern is to respond with frustration whenever you feel misunderstood. The next time it happens, you pause, breathe, and say nothing for a moment. That pause alone creates space for a new way of responding. These are not grand gestures. They are small cracks in the wall of habit through which light can enter. Zen masters often describe awakening as a matter of interruption. A sudden clap, a sharp question, a koan that jars the mind out of its familiar track. The purpose is not to confuse, but to break the pattern of thought long enough for clarity to shine through. In your own life, you can become your own Zen master by asking in moments of struggle, what pattern am I repeating, and how can I step aside from it, even slightly? Right now, it is important to remember that breaking a pattern is not the same as breaking yourself. Too often, people believe that change requires force, that they must push harder, criticize themselves more, and suffer their way into growth. But Buddhism teaches a gentler truth. Forcing yourself only deepens resistance. Compassion creates openness. When you step back and observe your habits with kindness, you loosen their grip. You stop identifying with them as who you are, and begin to see them as simply what you do. This shift in perspective makes all the difference. Think of a musician practicing a flawed note again and again. The sound may be off, but it is not the instrument that is broken. It is the habit of the hand. With guidance and gentle correction, the hand learns a new position, and the music changes. So it is with you. You are the instrument. Your patterns are the habits of the hand. They can be reshaped, and when they are, the song of your life begins to sound different. There will be times when the old patterns feel impossible to escape. The grooves are deep, the wheel heavy, the habit strong. But do not underestimate the power of a single shift. A single breath instead of a reaction. A single moment of silence instead of noise. A single choice to do one thing differently than yesterday. Each time you break the pattern, no matter how small, you weaken its hold and strengthen the possibility of something new. Over time, these small shifts accumulate. The morning once lost to scrolling becomes a space of reflection. The quick anger once automatic softens into patience. The endless busyness, once numbing, becomes infused with moments of presence. You evolve not by breaking yourself, but by breaking the cycles that no longer serve you. This is why Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness, the practice of seeing clearly. Awareness is the lamp that reveals the pattern. Without it, you remain in the dark, repeating unconsciously. With it, you see the loop and step aside. There is freedom in knowing that you are not condemned to repeat yourself forever. You may have lived in one rhythm for decades, but the present moment is always fresh, always offering the chance to choose differently. Even in the midst of long-standing habits, a single mindful breath can open a new doorway. The past does not bind you. The present liberates you. If only you are willing to see. So when you feel stuck, when your life seems like an endless circle of frustration or fatigue, do not turn against yourself. Do not call yourself broken. Instead, breathe. Step back. Ask softly, what pattern am I in right now? And then, what small, compassionate shift can I make today? It might be no more than choosing stillness over distraction, patience over irritation, awareness over autopilot. Yet, these small shifts are powerful. They are the beginning of transformation. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts we make the world. If you change the thought, if you change the pattern, you change the world you live in." That is the promise of this practice. Not the creation of a flawless self, but the gentle reshaping of the rhythms that guide your life. In breaking patterns with awareness and compassion, you discover that growth does not require force. It requires presence, and presence is always available. In this very breath, modern life often convinces us that our greatest resource is time. We measure our days by the clock, dividing hours into tasks, calculating how much can be accomplished before the sun sets. But Buddhism invites us to look deeper. Time itself is not what determines growth or peace. What truly matters is energy. You may have an entire day stretched before you. Yet if your energy is scattered, heavy, or restless, you accomplish very little of value. On the other hand, even a single focused hour, infused with presence, can carry more transformation than a whole day spent distracted. Think back to a time when hours seemed abundant, yet nothing meaningful was done. Perhaps you drifted between tasks, half attentive, half distracted, telling yourself you had plenty of time. At the end of the day, there was little to show, only fatigue from the constant shifting of attention. Now, recall a different moment, a short window, when you felt fully alive and alert. Perhaps you created something beautiful, solved a problem, or had a conversation that left you inspired. That brief period, though small in time, held immense weight because your energy was aligned. This is the truth. The Buddha pointed to presence is the real measure of living. Energy is subtle. It rises and falls throughout the day, influenced by body, mind, and environment. Some people feel most alive in the early morning, when silence still lingers in the air. Others find clarity in the quiet of afternoon or even late into the night. There is no single rhythm that applies to everyone. What matters is noticing your own. This is mindfulness applied not only to breath or thought, but to your natural cycles. When you become a student of your own energy, you begin to see patterns. You begin to know when to act and when to rest. In monasteries, daily schedules are structured around this awareness. Monks rise early, when the mind is clear, and dedicate that energy to meditation and chanting. Later in the day, when physical energy is stronger, they perform chores or study. As evening approaches, activities soften again into reflection and silence. This balance is not accidental. It honors the truth that energy, not time, determines the quality of practice. We too, outside the monastery, can benefit from such wisdom. Begin by simply observing. Ask yourself, when do I feel most focused? When does my mind wander most easily? When does my body feel heavy? And when does it feel light? Do not judge these rhythms. Do not compare them to someone else's. Just notice. Then, align your efforts with them. Use your brightest hours for what matters most: the work, the study, the acts of love that deserve your full attention. Use your lower energy times not for forcing productivity, but for gentler tasks, for rest, or for mindful pauses. In this way, you begin to live in harmony with yourself instead of against yourself. There is a story told of a monk who was asked why his practice seemed so effortless. While others struggled with fatigue and distraction, he smiled and said, "When I am tired, I rest. When I am awake, I work." The simplicity of his words hides a profound truth. Many of us resist our natural rhythms, forcing ourselves to produce when exhausted, or numbing ourselves when energy is high. We push when we should rest and distract ourselves when we could create. This resistance drains us more than any task itself. But when we honor our energy, when we allow it to guide our choices, life begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a flow. Notice too what drains your energy. Perhaps certain conversations leave you heavy, or certain environments feel overwhelming. Perhaps trying to do 3 things at once leaves you more depleted than doing one thing with presence. These are not small matters. Each drain of energy is a leak in the vessel of your life. The Buddha encouraged us to guard our attention as something sacred because it is the root of our vitality. Every time we give it away carelessly, we weaken ourselves. Every time we protect it, we strengthen the flame of our awareness. Energy is not just about physical stamina. It is also about the quality of your mind. A distracted hour feels exhausting because your attention is constantly torn. A mindful hour, even if filled with effort, leaves you refreshed because it is whole. The paradox of presence is that it conserves energy even as it uses it. Scatteredness, on the other hand, consumes energy without ever creating depth. This is why busy days often leave people empty, not because they worked too much, but because they worked without full attention. Imagine 2 people given the same task. One moves through it while checking their phone, thinking of other worries, rushing to finish. The other does the task fully present, with calm focus. The first may take longer, feel more stressed, and end with dissatisfaction. The second, though spending the same or less time, feels nourished, grounded, complete. The difference is not time but energy. This is the heart of Buddhist teaching. The quality of your awareness determines the quality of your life. Rumi once wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Energy, like the seasons, changes. There are days of spring-like vitality when ideas bloom easily. There are days of winter stillness when the body calls for rest. Resisting these changes creates suffering. Accepting them with grace creates harmony. You do not need to be endlessly productive to be alive. You need only to meet each season of your energy with mindfulness. So, let us reconsider the obsession with managing time. You cannot control the hours of the day. They pass whether you rush or rest. What you can guide is the way your energy moves through those hours. Ask not, "How many hours do I have?" but rather, "How alive am I in this hour?" If you can be fully present, even briefly, you touch the essence of life more deeply than if you spend an entire day half asleep in distraction. This is how true growth happens, not by stretching yourself thin across endless hours, but by gathering yourself fully into the moment at hand. 1 hour of presence outweighs 10 hours of scattered busyness. One mindful breath outweighs 1,000 restless thoughts. The Buddha's way is not about doing more, but about being here. Now, with all of your energy aligned, so tomorrow, when you wake, do not ask how much time you have. Ask how you will honor your energy. Notice when it rises. Notice when it falls. Align your actions with its flow. Protect it from what drains you. And above all, infuse it with awareness. For awareness transforms even the smallest act into something sacred. In this way, you begin to live not by the ticking of a clock, but by the rhythm of your own being. And in doing so, you discover a life that feels less pressured by time and more enriched by presence. When we look closely at our lives, we often believe exhaustion comes from lack of time. Yet, as the Buddha pointed out, it is rarely time that fails us. More often, it is the way we spend and protect our energy. To live with awareness is to guard this energy as something sacred, to recognize that it is the very essence of how we meet the world. If our energy is scattered, even simple tasks feel overwhelming. But if it is steady and protected, even great challenges become bearable. Think for a moment about how easily energy is drained in daily life. A single argument can leave you feeling weary for hours. An afternoon lost to scrolling through meaningless content can feel heavier than a morning spent working with focus. Certain people uplift you, while others leave you depleted after only a short conversation. This is why Buddhism teaches that we must be mindful not only of what we do, but of what we allow into our minds and hearts. Our energy is not infinite. It needs protection, kari, and nourishment. When the Buddha spoke of guarding the senses, he was not suggesting avoidance of life. He was reminding us that everything we see, hear, and consume shapes our inner world. If we surround ourselves with noise, distraction, or negativity, our energy is quickly stolen. But if we are selective, if we choose to spend time in places and with people that nourish us, then our inner flame grows brighter. Protecting energy is not selfish, it is essential. Without it, we cannot serve ourselves or others well. Notice how your day changes, depending on the state of your energy. When you are calm and focused, an hour of work flows easily, and what you create feels meaningful. But when you are tired, scattered, or emotionally burdened, the same task drags on endlessly, leaving you frustrated. This difference has little to do with time and everything to do with how your energy is directed. Protecting it means honoring its rhythm, using it wisely, and refusing to let it be wasted on things that weaken your spirit. In Buddhist tradition, mindfulness is the practice of returning again and again to what matters most. It is a shield against the endless distractions that drain vitality. When you sit in meditation, you practice gathering scattered thoughts back to the breath, conserving energy that would otherwise be lost. This same practice applies to daily life. Each time you say no to a distraction, each time you choose presence over fragmentation, you are protecting your energy. And with each choice, your inner reservoir deepens. Imagine your energy as a lamp burning oil. If you leave it exposed to wind, the flame flickers and dies quickly. But if you shield it, if you tend to it carefully, the flame can burn long and steady, lighting the way not just for yourself, but for others. In the same way, your energy, when scattered across trivial concerns, weakens, but when guarded, it shines with quiet strength. Protecting energy also means learning to align tasks with the state you are in. When you feel alert and focused, use that energy for what truly matters: the conversations, the creations, the work that requires your deepest presence. When you feel tired, instead of forcing yourself to continue at the same intensity, allow yourself to rest or to shift into gentler tasks. In this way, you honor the truth of impermanence, the natural ebb and flow of vitality. Forcing against it only deepens fatigue, but working with it allows you to sustain balance. There is also the matter of relationships. Some connections nurture your spirit, reminding you of kindness and compassion. Others pull you into cycles of complaint, judgment, or endless negativity. Buddhism encourages compassion for all beings, but compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be drained. It is possible to love someone while recognizing that their energy is not healthy for your journey right now. To protect your flame is to ensure that you can keep offering light to the world. If you let it burn out, you serve no one. This teaching applies equally to the environments we inhabit. Monasteries are often built with simplicity and spaciousness, not because monks are indifferent to beauty, but because clutter and noise steal energy. A clean, intentional space allows the mind to rest. You do not need to live in a monastery to benefit from this wisdom. Begin with your own surroundings. Remove what feels heavy or unnecessary. Create corners of peace where your senses can rest. Each act of simplification strengthens the clarity of your energy. In the digital age, one of the greatest drains is constant stimulation. Notifications, endless news, messages arriving without pause, each pulls at your attention, scattering energy like leaves in the wind. To protect yourself, consider creating boundaries. Silence alerts. Step away from screens for part of your day. Allow your mind to experience stillness without interruption. In that quiet, your energy gathers again, like water returning to its source. The Buddha taught that our attention is the most valuable treasure we possess. Where attention goes, energy flows. To guard attention is to protect the very essence of your life. Each time you choose focus over distraction, presence over scattering, you declare that your life is too precious to be wasted. Over time, this practice changes not just how you feel, but who you are. You begin to walk through the world with steadiness, offering calm to those around you. Consider how it feels to be in the presence of someone who protects their energy. They may not say much, yet their calm is palpable. They move with intention. Their words are measured, their actions thoughtful. You feel grounded simply by being near them. This is the quiet power of protected energy. It radiates outward, becoming a refuge for others. And it begins with small choices, made consistently, each day. So as you move forward, ask yourself, where is my energy going? What strengthens it? What drains it? How can I guard it more carefully? The answers may lead you to small adjustments, stepping away from negativity, simplifying your space, aligning tasks with your natural rhythms. But each adjustment matters. Each one is an act of honoring the life force within you. In time, you will discover that the quality of your life is not measured by the number of hours you have, but by how you direct the energy within those hours. Protect it, nurture it, let it shine steadily, and it will light your path and the paths of those around you. When we reflect on what shapes us most deeply, it is easy to think only of our choices, or discipline, or our willpower. Yet Buddhist wisdom teaches something subtler. We are constantly shaped by the environment we inhabit. Just as a flower cannot bloom in dry soil, we cannot thrive in spaces that choke our spirit. Our surroundings, physical, emotional, even digital, act as silent teachers. They either nourish clarity and peace, or they feed restlessness and confusion. To grow with awareness, we must learn to look closely at the environments that hold us and ask whether they support or hinder our journey. The Buddha often spoke of dependent origination. Nothing arises by itself. Every thought, every habit, every mood is influenced by countless conditions. Imagine sitting in a room filled with noise and clutter. Even if you try to meditate, your mind will likely feel unsettled. Now imagine sitting in a quiet garden where the air is fresh and the space uncluttered. The same practice feels lighter, more natural. This is not coincidence. It is the truth of interdependence. Just as the soil, water, and sunlight affect the growth of a tree, the environment you create around yourself affects the growth of your mind. In monasteries, this truth is reflected in every detail. The spaces are simple, uncluttered, designed to encourage stillness rather than distraction. Monks do not keep excess possessions, not out of cold austerity, but because each unnecessary item becomes a weight on the mind. Even the design of the meditation hall, clean lines, open space, silence, reflects this understanding. The physical environment is created to mirror the clarity sought within. And while we may not live in monasteries, we can bring this wisdom into our homes and lives. Think of your own space. Look at the room where you spend most of your time. Does it feel light, open, and peaceful? Or does it feel crowded, heavy, and restless? Each object in that room carries energy. Some remind you of beauty, gratitude, or love. Others may whisper of regret, of things left undone, of clutter that quietly drains you. Without noticing, we allow our environments to reflect chaos, and then we wonder why our minds feel the same. Yet when you simplify, when you choose intentionally what surrounds you, you create conditions for peace to flourish. The same is true of the people you allow into your life. Some relationships uplift, inspire, and support growth. Others cloud your spirit with gossip, negativity, or endless complaint. This too is environment. To walk the path of awareness is not to judge or reject others harshly, but to recognize with clarity certain energies nurture your practice, and others weaken it. You may still offer compassion to all beings, but compassion does not mean surrounding yourself with those who continually pull you into suffering. Just as a gardener protects young plants from harsh winds, you must protect your heart from environments that stunt your growth. Even the sounds and images you consume each day form part of your environment. Consider how much time is spent scrolling through information that leaves you unsettled, anxious, or empty. These inputs may seem harmless, but they shape the climate of your mind. The Buddha urged mindfulness not only in speech and action, but also in perception, what we allow in through our senses. Every image, every sound is like a seed. Choose carefully which ones you water. If you fill your days with noise, the mind grows noisy. If you choose peace, silence, and beauty, the mind reflects the same. There is a story of a monk who tended a small garden outside his hut. Every morning he would remove the weeds, water the soil, and watch carefully as the plants grew. A visitor once asked why he spent so much time in the garden instead of meditating inside. The monk smiled and said, "This garden is my meditation. As I clear the soil, I clear my mind. As I tend the plants, I tend my heart." This story reminds us that environment is not separate from inner practice. By shaping the outer world with care, we shape the inner world as well. To begin transforming your environment, you do not need to make dramatic changes. Start small. Perhaps you clear a corner of your room and make it a space of stillness. Perhaps you let go of objects that no longer serve your life. Each act of simplification is an act of liberation. You free not just physical space, but mental space as well. Each decision to create beauty and order outside reflects as clarity within. The same applies to your social environment. Notice how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel lighter, clearer, more open? Or do you feel drained, heavy, restless? This awareness helps you see the truth without judgment. You may still care for those who weigh you down, but you need not give them constant access to your energy. You can love from a distance. You can choose to spend more time with those who inspire peace and kindness. In doing so, you create an environment of relationships that mirror the qualities you wish to grow in yourself. Protecting your environment is not an act of selfishness, but of responsibility. When you nurture clarity within your space, you strengthen your capacity to serve others with compassion. When you reduce noise in your life, you become more present in your relationships. When you surround yourself with peace, you radiate peace outward. The environment you build for yourself does not benefit only you, it becomes a gift to everyone you touch. So, ask yourself gently, what does my environment teach me? Does it encourage stillness or restlessness? Does it inspire clarity or confusion? What can I change, even in small ways, to make my surroundings reflect the peace I wish to cultivate within? These questions are not burdens, but invitations. They invite you to see that transformation is not only inward, but also outward, and that the two are inseparable. When the flower blooms, we admire its beauty. Yet we often forget the soil, the water, and the sunlight that made it possible. In the same way, when we speak of growth and peace, we often forget the environment that supports it. But once we remember, once we begin to cultivate surroundings of clarity, simplicity, and compassion, growth becomes more natural. We no longer fight against conditions that hold us back. Instead, we align ourselves with conditions that help us rise. There is something profoundly healing about clearing space. Not just the space within the mind, but the space around us. The rooms we live in, the corners we walk past each day. The Buddha compared the mind to a garden. Yet, how often do we neglect the soil? We attempt to cultivate peace within. But if the outer world reflects disorder, our inner world mirrors it in subtle ways. The physical environment becomes a silent partner in practice, and when it is cluttered or chaotic, it weighs heavily on the heart. Think of a room filled with unnecessary objects, papers stacked in forgotten piles, clothes never worn, items kept only from habit or guilt. You may not consciously notice them, but each one takes a little of your attention. They whisper quietly, reminding you of things undone, of decisions postponed. The weight accumulates, not physically, but mentally, until the space feels heavy, even when you are doing nothing. This is why clearing the physical space is such a powerful spiritual act. It is not about tidiness for its own sake. It is about creating an atmosphere where the mind can rest. When monks sweep temple floors each morning, they are not merely removing dust. They are practicing mindfulness. Each movement of the broom is an offering of clarity. The act of sweeping clears the mind as much as it clears the floor. In the same way, when you clean your own space, it is not a chore to finish quickly, but an opportunity to align your inner and outer worlds, to fold clothes carefully, to wash dishes with presence, to arrange a table with intention. These are not small acts. They are forms of meditation. The Buddha taught that discipline, or sila, supports wisdom. Creating order in the environment is part of that discipline. It does not mean obsessing over perfection, but cultivating respect for the space that holds your life. Just as a shrine is kept clean to honor what is sacred, your home can be tended with the same care. Each time you let go of something that no longer serves you, you release not only an object, but also the subtle mental burden it carried. There is a story of a monk who kept only a bowl, a robe, and a mat. One day, another monk visited him and remarked, "You live with so little." The monk replied, "I live with everything I need." This does not mean we must renounce all possessions. Rather, it reminds us to ask, do the things I keep nourish me? Or do they weigh me down? If an item carries beauty, function, or joy, it belongs. If it carries heaviness, guilt, or distraction, perhaps it is time to let it go. In Zen practice, simplicity is not emptiness, but spaciousness. A room with fewer objects feels open, allowing the breath to expand, allowing the mind to settle. When you walk into such a space, you feel immediately lighter. This is the gift of clearing. It frees not only the eyes, but also the heart. And in that freedom, meditation deepens, reflection sharpens, and rest becomes more peaceful. It is important to approach this practice gently. Do not treat it as another demand, another goal to achieve perfectly. Begin small. Perhaps you clear one drawer, one shelf, one corner of a room. Do it with full presence. Notice the feel of each object, the memories it carries. Ask softly, does this serve me now? Does it reflect the life I wish to live? If the answer is no, thank it silently and let it go. In this way, clearing space becomes not a burden, but a ritual of release. As you continue, you may notice something surprising. Each time you release physical clutter, a corresponding clarity arises within. The act of letting go outside makes letting go inside easier. Old regrets, unnecessary worries, self-criticism, they begin to feel lighter, easier to set aside. The environment and the mind mirror each other, and by tending one, you tend the other. Rumi once said, "Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you." Clearing space is an act of welcoming change. It is an acknowledgement that you do not need to cling to what has already served its purpose. You create space for what is yet to come, and in that openness, life flows more freely. Even simple acts, making the bed with care, keeping a desk clear, creating a quiet corner for reflection, can transform your day. They tell the mind, here is a place of peace. Here is a foundation for clarity. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a life that feels more spacious, less burdened, more aligned with the simplicity of Buddhist practice. And so, the next time you feel restless, overwhelmed, or clouded, do not look only within. Look around you. What in your environment is echoing the chaos you feel? What can be cleared, simplified, honored? Begin there. The broom in your hand may teach you as much as the meditation cushion beneath you. The dust you sweep away may reflect the clutter of the mind. And in the act of clearing, both outer and inner worlds begin to shine more clearly. The modern world has created a new kind of clutter, one that does not gather on tables or in closets, but in the space of the mind. Unlike the objects we can touch and see, this clutter arrives quietly, through screens, notifications, and the endless pull of digital voices. It is subtle but powerful. You pick up your phone to check one message, and half an hour later, you are lost in an endless stream of information you never truly needed. This is the nature of digital noise. It steals not only your time but also your presence, scattering energy before the day has even begun. Buddhism teaches that the senses are gateways to the mind. Whatever we see, hear, and consume becomes food for consciousness. Just as the body is shaped by the meals we eat, the mind is shaped by the impressions we take in. In the past, these impressions came from the natural world, from conversations, from silence. Now, they often come from glowing screens filled with urgency, opinions, and distraction. It is no wonder the mind feels restless. The food we are feeding it is restless too. Imagine beginning your day with stillness, as monks do in monasteries, sitting in silence and hearing only the sound of birds or the stirring of wind. Now, contrast that with beginning the day by opening a phone, flooded instantly with messages, advertisements, news, and images. One start nourish peace, the other sows agitation. This is not to say that technology is evil. Like any tool, it depends on how it is used. But without mindfulness, it quickly becomes a thief of our most sacred resource, attention. The Buddha often urged his followers to guard the mind as carefully as a city guards its gates. Not every visitor should be allowed in, and not every impression deserves entry. In today's world, this teaching is more relevant than ever. Every scroll, every click, every sound that enters shapes your inner environment. To live mindfully is to choose wisely what you allow in, to treat your attention as something too precious to be stolen. Practical steps reflect this wisdom. You might silence notifications, so your attention is not constantly pulled by sounds and vibrations. You might create spaces in your home where technology is not welcome, perhaps the dining table, perhaps the bedroom. These small boundaries are not punishments. They are acts of respect. They remind you that your focus, your inner peace, your presence with loved ones are worth protecting. Zen practice often speaks of doing one thing at a time. To eat and only eat. To walk and only walk. Yet the digital world invites the opposite. You watch while messaging, listen while scrolling, work while distracted. This division weakens the mind. Returning to one-pointedness in the digital age means choosing consciously how to use technology. When you send a message, let it be the only thing you do. When you listen to music, give yourself to it fully. Even in the digital world, mindfulness can be practiced. Ask yourself honestly how much of your time online leaves you nourished, inspired, or at peace, and how much leaves you anxious, comparing yourself, or simply numb. This awareness itself is the first step. Once you see clearly which digital habits drain your spirit, you can begin to reshape them. Just as a gardener removes weeds to give space for flowers, you can remove digital noise to give space for clarity. There is a story told of a monk who visited a bustling market after years of living in the quiet of the temple, surrounded by the noise of bargaining, shouting, and movement. He returned to the monastery unsettled. His teacher asked, "Did the noise enter your ears, or did you carry it in your mind?" The monk realized that what disturbed him was not the sounds themselves, but his clinging to them. In the same way, digital noise does not only come from the outside, it lingers because we cling to it. Replaying, revisiting, refreshing endlessly. To let go is to see it clearly, acknowledge it, and then release it. This does not mean abandoning technology entirely. It means using it with intention. Technology can connect us to wisdom, to loved ones, to opportunities for growth. But it must serve us, not control us. Mindfulness asks, why am I opening this device? What do I seek in this moment? Is it truly nourishing? Or is it an escape from discomfort? These questions, asked gently, transform the way you engage with the digital world. Imagine what might change if you created just a little silence each day. Perhaps the first hour of the morning, untouched by screens. Perhaps the last hour before sleep, reserved for reflection or reading. These small sanctuaries of quiet reintroduce balance. They remind you that your life is not meant to be lived only through a glowing screen. There is breath. There is touch. There is the simple reality of being alive. Rumi once wrote, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will be your cure." In the same way, don't get lost in the noise. Notice that the restlessness you feel when disconnected from devices is itself the lesson. It shows how dependent the mind has become. If you sit through that discomfort, even for a short while, you will find beneath it a deeper peace. Silence, once uncomfortable, becomes nourishing. Presence, once difficult, becomes natural. The world will not grow quieter on its own. News will continue. Messages will keep arriving. The stream of information will never end. But within you lies the power to create quiet. By choosing when and how you engage, by guarding the gates of your attention, you build an inner monastery, even in the midst of modern life. And in that monastery, your mind finds rest. So tonight, consider how you might reshape your digital environment. Perhaps you silence one app. Perhaps you dedicate one meal a day to being phone-free. Begin small. Notice how it feels. The peace that arises is not from denial, but from intention. You discover again that your attention is sacred, and that what you give it to becomes your life. Choose with care, and you will find that the digital world no longer drains you, but serves you. Our surroundings are not only physical, they are also emotional, shaped by the people we allow close to us and the energy they bring. Just as clutter fills a room and steals its calm, certain relationships can fill the heart with weight, draining the vitality needed to grow. Buddhism reminds us that we are deeply interconnected. We are influenced not only by our own choices, but by the company we keep. To live with awareness is to look honestly at these connections and ask whether they support the peace we wish to cultivate. There are companions who nourish us. Their words are gentle. Their presence feels light. Their laughter carries warmth. Even in silence, they inspire ease. When we leave them, we feel more open, more alive. There are also companions who pull us into patterns of complaint, comparison, or negativity. Their words may not be cruel, but they cloud the mind, leaving us restless. This is not about judging others as good or bad. It is about noticing clearly the effect they have on your spirit. The Buddha taught that everything arises in dependence, and our moods, thoughts, and actions are no exception. In the early Buddhist texts, great emphasis is placed on kalyana mita, or noble friendship, A noble friend is one who encourages your growth, who reminds you of your values when you forget, who lifts you gently when you fall. Such friendships are seen not as luxuries but as necessities on the path. The Buddha himself told his disciple, Ananda, "Admirable friendship is the whole of the holy life." To walk this journey alone is difficult. To walk it with those who embody compassion and wisdom is a blessing beyond measure. Yet noble friendship also requires clarity. Compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be consumed by energies that continually harm you. You may still care deeply for those who are caught in negativity, but you are not required to let their patterns become your own. Loving someone does not mean giving them full access to your peace. Boundaries are acts of wisdom, not rejection. Just as a gardener protects tender plants from harsh winds while still acknowledging the wind's place in nature, you too can love, while choosing wisely how close certain influences come. Consider how often you may leave a conversation feeling drained, replaying harsh words, or absorbing a restless mood. This heaviness is part of your environment now, carried into the rest of your day. If such exchanges happen often, they become patterns that shape your inner climate. When you notice this, the invitation is not to condemn the other person, but to ask yourself, how can I protect my energy while still holding compassion? Sometimes it means limiting time spent together. Sometimes it means shifting the nature of the conversation. Sometimes it means simply offering love from afar. There is a Zen story of a monk who carried a woman across a muddy river. Years later, another monk, walking with him, asked, "Why did you carry her? That is against our vows." The first monk replied, "I set her down at the river's edge. Why are you still carrying her?" The story reminds us that holding on to others' burdens too long becomes our own suffering. Compassion means helping when we can, but wisdom means knowing when to release. Protecting your emotional environment also means surrounding yourself with those who uplift and inspire. Seek out companions who value presence, who remind you of patience, who encourage kindness in their words and actions. These relationships are like fresh air to the spirit. They do not need to be many. Even one noble friend can shift the direction of your path. Their example becomes a mirror, showing you what is possible within yourself. Rumi wrote, "Be with those who help your being." This simple guidance captures the essence of choosing emotional environments wisely. It is not selfish to prefer the company of those who nurture your peace. It is recognition that your inner life is precious, and that what you allow near it matters. Just as you would not willingly drink from a polluted stream, why drink constantly from conversations that poison the mind? Seek the clear streams. Drink deeply. Let them sustain you. At the same time, recognize that you, too, are part of the environment for others. Your words, your presence, your energy influence those around you. When you practice mindfulness, when you speak kindly, when you carry calm into a room, you become a noble friend to others. In this way, the practice is reciprocal. As you protect your emotional environment, you also create one in which others may find refuge. The Buddha's teaching of compassion is always paired with wisdom. Compassion without wisdom can lead to burnout. Wisdom without compassion can become cold. Together, they form balance. Protecting your emotional environment is an expression of this balance. You care for others with kindness, but you also care for yourself with clarity. You recognize that to offer true compassion, your own flame must be steady. A candle struggling to stay lit cannot light another. So look gently at your relationships. Ask yourself, who lifts me closer to the person I wish to become? Who continually pulls me away? How can I nurture the connections that inspire peace while holding healthy distance from those that drain it? These are not questions of judgment, but of direction. They help you see where your energy is supported and where it is lost. When you begin to shape your emotional environment with intention, you will notice a shift. The air feels lighter. Conversations become nourishing instead of heavy. You end the day feeling more whole, less depleted, and slowly, without force, your inner world begins to mirror this clarity. In the end, creating a healthy emotional environment is not about cutting people off or living in isolation. It is about choosing wisely, loving with compassion, and protecting your peace so that you may continue to walk the path with strength. To live this way is to honor both yourself and others. It is to recognize that the quality of your companions becomes the quality of your journey. There is one environment more intimate than the rooms we live in or the relationships we hold. It is the inner environment of our own thoughts. The Buddha called the mind the forerunner of all things. Every word, every action, every mood begins first as a thought. Just as the body is influenced by food and air, the mind is shaped by the quality of the inner dialogue we repeat to ourselves. If our thoughts are harsh, critical, or rooted in fear, then, no matter how peaceful our surroundings may appear, the atmosphere within remains heavy. But when thoughts are kind, patient, and guided by awareness, even the most difficult circumstances feel lighter. Many people live under the constant weight of self-criticism. They replay mistakes, magnify flaws, and compare themselves endlessly with others. Each of these thoughts is like a drop of poison added to the water they must drink. Over time, the inner environment becomes toxic, and life feels difficult, even without external struggle. Buddhism reminds us that such thoughts are not ultimate truths. They are habits of mind, seeds watered again and again, until they sprout into weeds. And just as weeds can be removed, so too can these thoughts be replaced with seeds of compassion and clarity. The Buddha often distinguished between wholesome and unwholesome mental states. Wholesome thoughts lead to peace, generosity, patience, and wisdom. Unwholesome ones lead to greed, anger, and delusion. Each time we repeat a thought, we strengthen its roots. The mind does not discriminate between truths and falsehoods. It becomes what it is fed. If you constantly tell yourself you are not enough, the mind begins to believe it. If you remind yourself with kindness that you are capable, worthy, and present, the mind leans toward that truth. Imagine two wolves living within the mind, one embodying fear, judgment, and anger. the other representing compassion, clarity, and peace. The old parable asks, which wolf grows stronger? The answer is simple: the one you feed. This story mirrors Buddhist teaching. Every moment you choose where to place your attention, you are feeding one wolf or the other. You are shaping the climate of your inner environment. But how do we change the dialogue when it feels so automatic? The first step is awareness. Often, we are so identified with our thoughts that we mistake them for reality. To practice mindfulness is to step back and observe without judgment. Notice when self-criticism arises. Notice when fear whispers. Say to yourself, "This is a thought, not a fact." In that pause, a small space opens. That space is freedom. Once awareness is present, compassion must follow. Do not attack the unwholesome thought with anger. That only feeds more negativity. Instead, treat the mind as you would a child who has wandered off the path. Gently guide it back. Replace harsh words with kinder ones. If the thought says, "I am failing," respond softly, "I am learning." If the thought says, "I am weak," remind yourself, "I am still walking, still breathing, still alive." Over time, these compassionate replacements begin to shape the inner environment into one that nurtures instead of harms. Zen masters often emphasize the importance of treating oneself with the same kindness offered to others. Many people show patience to friends, but are merciless toward themselves. The Buddha's teaching on metta, or loving kindness, was never meant to stop at others. It includes oneself fully. To sit quietly and repeat phrases of goodwill. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at peace is to replant the soil of the mind. At first, these words may feel forced, but repetition waters the seed, and slowly, kindness becomes more natural. The inner environment is also shaped by the stories we tell ourselves about life. Some stories bind us. I must always achieve. I cannot change. I am alone. Others liberate us. I am growing. This too shall pass. I am connected to all beings. Each story acts like a filter, coloring how we see the world. The practice of mindfulness invites us to question these stories. Are they true? Do they serve peace? If not, we have the power to release them. Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Thoughts, too, are seasons. They arise, linger, and pass. When we cling to them, we suffer. When we let them move naturally, the mind clears. A stormy sky does not mean the sun is gone. It only means the clouds are passing. Likewise, painful thoughts are not permanent truths. They are clouds. The luminous mind, as the Buddha described, remains beneath them, untouched. Creating a wholesome inner environment is not about forcing yourself to think positively at all times. It is about cultivating balance. Some days the mind will be heavy. That is natural. The practice is to notice without drowning, to bring kindness into the heaviness, and to trust that it too will pass. Over time, this steady kindness transforms the climate of the mind. Consider the difference it makes when the inner voice shifts. If your environment is dominated by harshness, even small tasks feel burdensome. But if your inner voice is kind, the same tasks feel lighter. Encouragement gives energy. Criticism drains it. The external world may remain the same, but your inner environment changes everything about how you experience it. So tonight, ask yourself, what kind of environment am I creating in my own mind? Am I watering seeds of kindness? Or am I feeding the wolf of judgment? What words do I repeat to myself most often? And do they help me grow or keep me small? These questions are not meant to create guilt, but to awaken choice. Because you are never trapped by your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which seeds to water. With time, with awareness, with compassion, the inner environment becomes a place of refuge rather than struggle. It becomes a temple of peace you carry wherever you go. No matter how noisy the world outside, inside there is stillness. No matter how heavy the day, inside there is space. This is the gift of tending to your inner environment with care. The word discipline often carries a shadow. For many, it suggests rules, restrictions, or punishments. It recalls childhood scoldings, rigid schedules, or the feeling of being forced into something unwanted. Yet, in Buddhist philosophy, discipline, or sila, carries a very different meaning. It is not a harsh command, but a gentle structure. It is not about denying yourself joy, but about creating the conditions in which joy can naturally flourish. True discipline is not a prison, but an expression of self-love. Imagine a river flowing freely, without banks. Its waters scatter and spread, eventually becoming stagnant or lost in the soil. But with steady banks guiding its course, the river deepens, flows powerfully, and nourishes the land. Discipline is like those banks. Without it, our energy scatters. We chase pleasures, give in to impulses, and allow distractions to dictate our lives. With it, we flow with direction, gathering strength, and offering life to everything we touch. The Buddha placed discipline as one of the foundations of the Eightfold Path. It is not an external demand, but a personal devotion to living with clarity. To practice discipline in this way is to say, I care about my mind. I care about my body. I care about the future that is shaped by my present choices. It is not about perfection or rigid control, but about creating boundaries that protect what is sacred within you. Think of the choices you make each day. Do you rise with intention, or do you let the morning slip away in distraction? Do you speak words that align with kindness, or do you allow impatience to spill into your conversations? Do you nourish your body with care, or do you neglect its needs? Each of these choices reflects discipline, not in the sense of force, but in the sense of alignment. When you act with discipline, you are not punishing yourself. You are guiding yourself. Just as a loving parent guides a child towards safety and growth. There is a story in the Zen tradition of a monk who rose before dawn every day to meditate. When asked if he ever felt tired of the routine, he smiled and said, "I do not rise because I must. I rise because I love the dawn." His discipline was not a burden, but a devotion, a way of honoring what he cherished. In the same way, true discipline arises not from fear, but from love. When you love your body, you care for it with rest, movement, and nourishing food. When you love your mind, you guard it from distractions and feed it wisdom. When you love your spirit, you make space for silence, reflection, and presence. Many struggle with discipline because they see it as something they have to do, rather than something they get to do. This shift in perspective changes everything. To say, "I must meditate," feels heavy, like a chore. To say, "I get to sit in silence and care for my mind," feels like a gift. To say, "I must avoid distractions," feels restrictive. To say, "I get to protect my attention for what truly matters," feels empowering. Discipline, when rooted in love, becomes not a chain, but a key. Rumi once wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Discipline allows you to do this. It creates the stability needed to face life's changing seasons without being thrown off course. Without discipline, the storms of desire and fear pull you in every direction. With it, you remain steady, like a tree rooted deeply, bending but not breaking in the wind. Consider how discipline touches even the smallest details of life. Choosing to go to bed at a reasonable hour so that you wake with clarity. Choosing to pause before speaking so that your words reflect kindness. Choosing to keep commitments, not because you fear failure, but because you respect yourself. Each of these is an act of discipline, and each one shapes the path of your life. Over time, they form a rhythm that supports your growth. It is important to recognize that discipline in Buddhism is not about rigid perfection. The Buddha often reminded his followers of the middle way, the path between extremes. Too much indulgence leads to chaos, but too much rigidity leads to suffering as well. True discipline balances firmness with compassion. It allows room for mistakes, for rest, for beginning again. When you stray, discipline does not scold, but gently guides you back, just as a compass points north, no matter how many times you wander. Think of a musician learning to play an instrument. At first, discipline means practicing scales, repeating them daily, sometimes without joy. But over time, the repetition creates freedom. The musician no longer thinks of the scales, they become second nature. The discipline that once felt effortful becomes the very source of expression and beauty. So too with life. At first, discipline feels like effort, but with time, it becomes a natural rhythm, the foundation upon which freedom and peace arise. When we look at our lives without discipline, we often see cycles of chaos. Impulses lead us to choices that bring momentary pleasure but lasting regret. We react quickly and harshly, then feel the sting of our words. We chase after distractions, then wonder why we feel empty. Discipline interrupts these cycles. It says pause, breathe, choose differently. It reminds us that we are not slaves to impulse, but beings with awareness and choice. To live without discipline is to live like a candle in the wind, flickering and unstable. To live with discipline is to live like a lamp protected by glass, shining steadily, unaffected by every gust. Which life feels more nourishing, more peaceful? The answer is clear. Discipline, when seen through the lens of love, is not about control. It is about freedom. Freedom from chaos. Freedom from regret. Freedom from being pulled endlessly by desires that do not serve us. So let us reframe this word. Discipline is not the harsh voice of punishment. It is the gentle hand of guidance. It is the structure that allows the river of your life to flow with strength. It is the act of saying to yourself, I am worthy of care. I am worthy of alignment. I am worthy of peace. And each time you practice discipline with this spirit, you come closer to your true nature, steady, clear, and free. When we think of discipline in the ordinary sense, it often feels abstract, something belonging to rules or schedules. But Buddhist discipline is lived in the most ordinary details of daily life. It is not something separate from your morning routine, your meals, your conversations, or your rest. It is expressed in the choices you make moment by moment, choices that either align you with peace or scatter you into restlessness. To turn discipline into a living practice is to infuse your days with quiet rituals that serve as anchors, holding you steady when the currents of distraction try to pull you away. Consider the simple act of waking in the morning. Discipline here is not about forcing yourself out of bed harshly or denying yourself rest. It is about greeting the day with intention. Instead of immediately rushing into obligations, you might choose to sit quietly, breathe, and remind yourself of your guiding intention for the day. This one choice shifts the entire tone of what follows. It transforms morning from a hurried beginning into a sacred threshold. Or think of eating. Many approach meals distracted, scrolling through screens or rushing through bites, hardly tasting what sustains them. But when discipline is present, eating becomes an act of mindfulness. You pause. You look at the food before you. You recognize the labor and life that brought it here. And you chew slowly, with gratitude. The meal becomes more than nourishment for the body. It becomes nourishment for awareness. This is discipline in action, not rigid, not restrictive, but deeply respectful. The same is true with speech. Words are powerful. They can uplift or wound, heal or harm. Buddhist discipline asks us to pause before speaking, to ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? This small act of restraint is not a loss of freedom, but the deepest expression of care. By holding back unwholesome words, you create space for compassion to enter. This is the discipline of the tongue, practiced not in silence alone, but in every conversation. Daily rituals can also include moments of stillness, deliberately set aside amid the noise of life. A short period of meditation, a walk taken in silence, a few minutes of journaling before bed. Each of these is a declaration of self-respect. They remind you that your mind deserves care, that your spirit deserves rest. These rituals may feel small, but repeated consistently, they create a rhythm, and rhythm, more than willpower, is what sustains discipline over time. Consider also the discipline of saying no. In a world that demands constant availability, it can feel difficult to refuse invitations, requests, or distractions. Yet each time you say yes to something misaligned with your values, you are saying no to the peace you seek. Discipline teaches you to guard your boundaries, not with hardness, but with clarity. To say, "I cannot do this now," or "this is not for me," is not selfishness. It is an affirmation that your time and energy are sacred, and that you will use them wisely. The Buddha once said that discipline is not about creating pain, but about preventing it. Without discipline, desires and impulses lead us into cycles of suffering. With discipline, we are freed from those cycles. Imagine someone who goes to sleep whenever they wish, eats whatever they crave, and speaks whatever comes to mind. For a time, it may feel like freedom, but soon the body is unhealthy, the mind restless, relationships strained. Contrast this with someone who sets gentle boundaries, sleeping when the body needs rest, eating with mindfulness, speaking with care. This person may appear more restrained, yet their life is freer because it is no longer bound by regret or chaos. There is a Zen saying, "When walking, walk. When eating, eat." This is not only about mindfulness but about discipline. To do one thing fully requires the discipline to resist scattering attention. It requires saying no to multitasking, no to distraction, no to the pull of endless noise. And yet, in this restraint lies joy. For when you walk, and only walk, the world reveals itself in detail: the sound of leaves, the feel of air, the rhythm of your own steps. When you eat, and only eat, flowers unfold. Gratitude deepens. What seemed like limitation becomes freedom. Rituals of discipline also extend into how you end the day. Instead of collapsing into bed with unresolved thoughts and digital noise, you can create a closing ritual. Perhaps you reflect on the day's lessons, express gratitude, or simply breathe deeply to release what no longer serves you. This kind of discipline is not rigid but compassionate. It allows you to rest with clarity, preparing the mind for another day of practice. It is important to remember that discipline does not demand perfection. There will be days when you forget your rituals, when impatience spills from your lips, when distractions win. The discipline is not in never failing, but in returning again and again. Just as the breath drifts and is brought back in meditation, discipline is the act of bringing yourself back, to rise again after falling, to recommit gently without shame. This is the true essence of the practice. Think of discipline as devotion. Devotion to your own well-being. Devotion to the peace you wish to offer others. Devotion to the clarity that makes life meaningful. When you treat discipline this way, it ceases to feel heavy. It becomes light, joyful, even beautiful. You begin to see each ritual not as something you must do, but as something you are grateful to do. Over time, these daily practices weave themselves into the fabric of your being. You no longer think of them as discipline at all. They simply become the way you live. the rhythm of your days. And from this rhythm arises a deep strength, a quiet steadiness that carries you through both calm and storm. So ask yourself gently, what rituals can I create that honor my mind, body, and spirit? What choices can I make each day that reflect self-love rather than self-neglect? Begin small, with 1 or 2 practices. Nurture them consistently. Let them become your anchors. And, as they take root, you will discover that discipline is not about restriction, but about liberation. It frees you from the pull of impulse and chaos, and leads you into the peace of living in alignment. There is a quiet misconception about discipline, one that often discourages people from practicing it with sincerity. Many believe that discipline requires flawless execution, that one mistake, one lapse, one missed ritual means failure. They imagine discipline as a rigid staircase where one wrong step sends them crashing down. But Buddhism offers a softer, visa truth. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about returning, again and again, with gentleness. The Buddha spoke often of the middle way, the path between extremes. Discipline, when practiced in this spirit, is not a whip that punishes you for stumbling, but a hand that lifts you up and guides you back to the path. Consider the breath during meditation. No matter how experienced, the mind will wander. It drifts into memory, into worry, into imagination. The beginner may feel frustration at this, believing they are failing. But the practice is not about never wandering. It is about noticing when you have drifted and gently returning to the breath. Each return is not a failure, but the very heart of the practice. So, it is with discipline in daily life. You may lose your rhythm. You may forget your intention. But each time you return, you strengthen the habit of awareness. This approach requires compassion. Without compassion, discipline quickly becomes perfectionism, a cycle of striving and shame. You scold yourself for missing a practice, for speaking unkindly, for falling into distraction. But scolding only adds weight. It feeds the very patterns you wish to change. Compassion, on the other hand, softens the heart and makes space for growth. It allows you to begin again without resentment. Imagine guiding a small child who stumbles while learning to walk. You would not strike them for falling. You would encourage them to rise, smiling at their effort, knowing each attempt builds strength. Why treat yourself with less kindness than this? Zen teachers often describe practice as falling down 7 times, getting up 8. The falling is inevitable. What matters is the rising, and the rising is gentler when you carry no self-hatred, only patience. Over time, this cycle of falling and rising becomes a rhythm, one that deepens resilience. You no longer fear mistakes because you know they do not end the journey. They are part of it. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition of a monk who vowed to meditate every evening without fail. For weeks, he succeeded. But one night, exhaustion overtook him and he slept without sitting. The next morning, he confessed to his teacher. Ashamed, the teacher asked, "Did you sit tonight?" The monk said, "I will." The teacher smiled and replied, "Then your practice is alive. The story reminds us that what matters is not an unbroken record, but the willingness to return. Each moment of renewal is a fresh beginning, and beginnings carry immense power. In this way, discipline becomes an act of forgiveness as much as effort. Forgiving yourself for slipping allows you to walk forward without the burden of guilt. And this forgiveness is not indulgence. It is clarity. It sees that clinging to self-criticism wastes energy, while returning to the path renews it. Buddhism teaches that the mind is luminous by nature, obscured only by passing clouds. Discipline is not about erasing the clouds instantly. It is about remembering that the sun remains and returning to it each time the clouds part. This perspective also prevents burnout. When discipline is practiced without compassion, it often collapses under its own weight. People push themselves harshly, setting unrealistic standards, and when they cannot meet them, they abandon the practice entirely. But when discipline is balanced with kindness, it becomes sustainable. You rest when needed, without guilt. You acknowledge limits, without shame. You continue not because you fear punishment, but because you trust the process. Like water carving stone, slow persistence achieves more than violent force. Think of a musician again. At first, practice requires effort. Mistakes are constant, and progress feels slow. If the musician judges each error harshly, they will soon abandon the instrument. But if they approach each mistake with patience, understanding that error is part of learning, then practice becomes joyful. Slowly, the music begins to flow. The same is true of life. Discipline is a practice, not a performance. Its beauty lies not in flawless execution, but in steady presence. This truth can be felt in simple daily examples. Perhaps you resolve to wake earlier for meditation, but one morning you oversleep. Without compassion, you berate yourself, deciding you are weak, and the practice dissolves. With compassion, you smile, rise later, and still take 5 minutes to sit. The discipline lives on because you returned instead of giving up. Or perhaps you decide to eat more mindfully. But at a meal, you rush distractedly. Instead of declaring failure, you notice. You pause. And at the next bite, you return to presence. The practice is preserved not in perfection, but in the returning. Rumi wrote, "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair." This spirit echoes the Buddhist path. No matter how many times you wander, you are always welcome to return. Discipline infused with compassion becomes a caravan of renewal, not despair. It invites you back, again and again, until the path itself becomes home. When you begin to live discipline in this way, a subtle transformation occurs. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop measuring yourself against impossible ideals. Instead, you learn to flow with life's rhythms. Some days your practice will feel strong. Other days, fragile. Both are part of the journey. You stop demanding perfection from yourself and begin to celebrate persistence. You realize that falling off the path does not erase your progress. It is simply another step along the way. The Buddha himself emphasized this truth. When asked how progress is measured, he did not speak of rigid consistency or flawless conduct. He spoke of awareness, of the ability to recognize when the mind has wandered and bring it back. Progress lies in the returning, not in never straying. Discipline, then, is the courage to return again and again, to trust that each small act of renewal carries weight, shaping who you are becoming. So, as you reflect on your own life, remember this: you will stumble, you will forget, you will lose your way. But none of this defines you. What defines you is the choice to rise again with kindness, to return with patience, to keep walking with devotion. Discipline is not perfection. It is presence. It is love guiding you back. No matter how many times you stray, there is a freedom that arises when discipline becomes natural, when it is no longer something you struggle to maintain, but something you embody with ease. At first, discipline feels like effort, like swimming upstream against long-standing habits. But over time, it becomes less about resisting and more about flowing. What once felt like duty begins to feel like devotion. The daily rituals that seemed burdensome reveal themselves as sources of peace. You begin to crave the stillness of meditation, the clarity of structure, the steadiness of saying no to what drains you and yes to what nourishes you. In this way, discipline transforms from a cage into a form of liberation. Imagine waking early, not because you must, but because the quiet hours before the world stirs have become your sanctuary. You sit, breathe, stretch, or simply watch the light change in the sky. There is no sense of obligation here, only a deep appreciation for the gift of presence. This is discipline matured, no longer a rule to follow, but a rhythm that carries you naturally. Just as a musician no longer thinks of scales after years of practice, but simply plays, you no longer think of discipline as effort. It has become the natural expression of who you are. The Buddha described true freedom not as doing whatever you wish in every moment, but as being free from the impulses that enslave you. Without discipline, impulses rule. You reach for distractions, indulge in habits that harm, and speak words that later bring regret. With discipline, you are free to choose differently. You are no longer bound by craving or aversion. You can act with clarity, speak with care, rest without guilt. This is the paradox. Discipline, when practiced with love, creates freedom. Consider the discipline of speech. At first, pausing before speaking may feel unnatural, as though you are holding yourself back. But in time, it becomes second nature. The pause no longer feels like restraint, but like space. In that space, kindness finds its voice. Or think of the discipline of attention. At first, resisting constant distraction may feel difficult, even frustrating. But over time, the quiet focus becomes deeply satisfying. You no longer feel enslaved by the buzzing of notifications or the pull of endless noise. You are free to direct your attention where it matters most. There is a Zen saying, "The obstacle is the path." The discipline you resist most strongly is often the one that will set you free. Perhaps it is the discipline of rising earlier, of caring for your body, of speaking more gently, of saying no to what drains you. At first, each feels like an obstacle, but when practiced consistently with compassion, each becomes the very path to peace. What seemed restrictive becomes the doorway to liberation. Freedom through discipline is also reflected in the body. Without caring for it, the body becomes heavy, sluggish, filled with tension. The freedom to move, to breathe deeply, to live fully is diminished. But when you discipline yourself to stretch, to walk, to rest when needed, the body feels lighter. You are free to enjoy life more fully because you have cared for the vessel that carries you. Discipline here is not punishment, but love for the body's precious gift. The same truth applies to the mind. Without discipline, the mind is restless, pulled endlessly between past and future, never settling in the present. But when you train it gently, returning it again and again to awareness, it learns to rest. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer control you. You are free to observe without clinging. This is one of the deepest freedoms, the freedom not to be ruled by every passing thought. Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Discipline allows this grace. When life brings difficulty, your practice keeps you grounded. When joy arises, your practice keeps you balanced. Discipline does not prevent storms, but it ensures that you remain steady within them. This steadiness is freedom, freedom from being tossed about by every change of circumstance. There is also joy in knowing that your choices align with your values. Each time you say no to distraction and yes to presence, you feel a quiet satisfaction. Each time you choose kindness over impatience, you feel lighter. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-respect deepens. These moments accumulate, creating a sense of integrity. You begin to trust yourself more fully, and self-trust is one of the greatest freedoms. The freedom of knowing you can rely on yourself to walk with awareness. Discipline practiced with love also softens the heart toward others. When you cultivate presence and patience in yourself, you naturally extend it outward. You listen more fully. You respond more gently. You become a source of calm for those around you. This too is freedom, freedom from the reactive cycles that cause harm. Freedom to embody compassion even in difficulty. In time, the distinction between discipline and freedom disappears. They are seen not as opposites, but as companions. Discipline gives structure, freedom gives spaciousness. Together, they create balance. You live not in the chaos of indulgence, nor in the rigidity of control, but in the flowing river between. This is the middle way, the path the Buddha taught, neither extreme, but harmony. So, reflect on your own life. Where do you feel enslaved by impulse? Where do you long for freedom, but resist the discipline that would bring it? Begin there. Choose one small practice. Approach it not as punishment, but as devotion. Nurture it with patience. Return to it when you falter. Over time, watch as what once felt restrictive begins to feel liberating. Discipline, when infused with compassion, becomes love. And love, when practiced with steadiness, becomes freedom. This is the quiet secret of the path, that what you thought would bind you instead sets you free. At the end of the day, when the sun has set and silence begins to settle, many people collapse into bed carrying the weight of everything left unresolved. Thoughts replay themselves, like echoes an awkward conversation. A mistake made. A task left unfinished. The phone is picked up one last time, scrolling through fragments of other lives, until sleep overtakes the mind, and so the day ends not in peace, but in noise. The Buddha, however, taught a gentler way. He reminded us that reflection is not a luxury, but a necessity. To pause before rest, to look inward with honesty and kindness, is to plant seeds of clarity that will bloom in the morning. Reflection is not about judgment. It is not a harsh examination of where you failed. Rather, it is like holding up a mirror not to criticize, but to see clearly. Ask yourself simple questions. How did I show up today? Was I patient, or was I reactive? Did I move with purpose, or did I allow myself to drift? What moments brought me joy, and what moments drained me? These questions are not meant to condemn but to illuminate. They allow you to see patterns that might otherwise remain hidden. And in seeing them, you create the possibility of change. In Buddhist practice, this kind of reflection is a form of mindfulness. It keeps the mind from moving blindly from one day to the next. Without reflection, life becomes a blur. We react. We repeat. We move forward without truly learning. But when we reflect, each day becomes a teacher. The smallest interactions, the briefest choices, all carry wisdom if we are willing to listen. In this way, reflection transforms ordinary days into steps along the path of awakening. There is a story of a monk who ended each day by bowing 3 times, once in gratitude for what he had learned, once in forgiveness for his mistakes, and once in intention for tomorrow. The ritual was simple, yet powerful. It reminded him that every day was part of a larger journey, that no moment was wasted, that even mistakes carried lessons. You too can create such a ritual, one that suits your life. It might be writing a few lines in a journal, sitting quietly for 5 minutes, or simply breathing deeply before lying down. The form matters less than the intention. What matters is the willingness to pause, to listen inwardly, and to close the day with awareness. Reflection also creates space for letting go. Many people carry the burdens of the day into sleep. Regrets, worries, unspoken words. These linger in the mind and body, making rest shallow. But when you take a few moments to reflect, you give yourself the chance to release. You acknowledge what was difficult. You forgive yourself for what you could not change. And you thank the day for what it offered, even if the lesson was hard. In doing so, you make room for rest. The mind softens, the body relaxes, and sleep becomes more nourishing. The Buddha often emphasized impermanence, the truth that all things pass. Reflection before rest allows you to practice this truth. You see the events of the day as transient, as experiences that arose and have now ended. By acknowledging them and letting them go, you align with the flow of impermanence instead of clinging. This does not mean ignoring responsibility or avoiding growth. It means carrying forward only the wisdom, not the weight. Rumi once wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Reflection allows this acceptance. You see yourself not as a fixed being, but as a process, always changing, always learning. Some days you are patient, some days you are not. Some days you embody kindness, other days you forget. Reflection shows you these seasons without harshness, reminding you that each has its place, each carries a lesson. In this way, self-awareness becomes not a source of shame, but of compassion. Another gift of reflection is that it creates continuity. Without it, days feel disconnected, as though each stands alone. With reflection, each day becomes linked to the next. You see how today's impatience arose from yesterday's lack of rest, or how today's peace grew from the intention you set in the morning. You notice how a kind word to someone yesterday blossomed into trust today. This continuity deepens your understanding of cause and effect. One of the central teachings of Buddhism, it reminds you that nothing stands alone, and that each choice carries forward. To practice reflection, you need not devote long hours. Even 5 quiet minutes are enough. Sit or lie down, close your eyes, and allow the day to replay gently. Do not linger on details. Simply observe. Smile at the moments that brought light. Acknowledge the moments that were heavy. Then ask yourself, what one intention can I carry into tomorrow? Let that intention rest softly in your heart as you drift into sleep. Over time, this simple practice weaves a thread of awareness through your life, connecting each day with clarity and purpose. There will be nights when reflection feels difficult, when the mind resists silence, when you want only to escape into sleep. That too is natural. Do not force it. Even noticing your resistance is a form of reflection. Some nights your questions will bring insight. Other nights, only quiet. Both are valuable. The point is not to achieve something impressive, but to turn inward, to meet yourself with honesty. That alone is transformative. Reflection is also an act of self-love. It says, "My life is worth looking at. My choices matter. My presence matters." Too often we move through the world as though we are passengers in our own story. Reflection reminds us that we are participants, creators of our experience through thought, word, and deed. This recognition is empowering. It allows us to step into each new day with greater clarity, with greater intention. So tonight, before you close your eyes, pause. Do not rush past this threshold. Ask yourself softly, what did I learn today? What can I release? What can I carry forward with love? Let the answers come gently, without force. And as you breathe out the last breath of the day, Let go of everything that no longer serves you. Fall not only into sleep, but into awareness. When you practice reflecting before rest, something subtle but profound begins to happen. Life, which once felt like an endless cycle of repeated days, starts to reveal patterns of cause and effect. You notice how certain actions give rise to certain states of mind. You see how skipping meditation makes you more irritable, how a kind word in the morning softens the entire day, how eating with awareness brings calm, while rushing through meals leaves you unsettled. These observations are not abstract philosophy. They are the lived truth of dependent origination, the Buddhist teaching that all experiences arise from conditions. Reflection helps you see those conditions clearly. And with that clarity, change becomes possible. Without reflection, too many move through life like travelers who never look back on the road they've walked. They rush forward, chasing goals, without noticing the ground beneath their feet. They repeat mistakes, not because they are incapable of growth, but because they never paused long enough to see the connection between action and consequence. Reflection interrupts this cycle. It turns the day into a teacher, each moment into a lesson. You begin to live less as a passenger and more as a participant in your own becoming. There is a practice in Buddhism known as the 5 recollections. Monks and laypeople alike are encouraged to reflect daily on the truths of aging, sickness, death, separation, and the fact that actions are our true possessions. This practice may seem somber, but its purpose is not to weigh down the heart. It is to remind us of impermanence and responsibility. When you reflect on these truths, you see more clearly how precious each day is. You realize that small choices matter. That time is not to be wasted in distraction or resentment. Reflection before rest is your own version of this practice. It is your way of remembering this day was not meaningless. It was a step, however small, on the path of awakening. A Zen master once said, "At the end of the day, ask not, did I succeed, but did I live with awareness?" This is the essence of reflection. Success, as the world defines it, is often shallow, measured in tasks completed or achievements gained. But awareness looks deeper. It asks whether you lived in alignment with your values, whether you spoke with kindness, whether you gave your presence fully to the moments that mattered. In this way, reflection turns the measure of life from external accomplishments to inner clarity. There is also healing in this practice. Many people lie awake at night, tormented by regrets. They replay harsh words spoken in anger, opportunities missed, moments of weakness. The mind becomes a restless loop, robbing sleep of its peace. Reflection offers a way to transform this loop. Instead of replaying with judgment, you observe with compassion. You acknowledge the mistake. You forgive yourself. You set an intention to do better tomorrow. The mind softens, and sleep comes more easily. You learn to end the day not in self-condemnation, but in gentle release. Imagine sitting quietly at the close of the day. You review your moments like a traveler laying out items gathered along the road. Some are treasures, acts of kindness, glimpses of joy, moments of patience. Others are heavier irritations, mistakes, lapses in awareness. You do not cling to the treasures nor condemn the burdens. You simply look at them, thank the day for its lessons, and then place them all down. You do not need to carry them into the night. Tomorrow will bring its own path. Tonight, you rest. Reflection also deepens gratitude. When you pause to look back, you see moments you might have otherwise forgotten: the smile of a stranger, the taste of a meal, the way the sky looked at sunset. These small details, noticed at the end of the day, remind you that beauty was present, even amid difficulty. Gratitude arises naturally, softening the heart, and gratitude, carried into sleep, becomes a gentle medicine. It calms the nervous system, quiets the restless mind, and prepares the body for deep rest. Rumi wrote, "Wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life." Reflection before rest allows you to weave that cloak, thread by thread. Each memory of beauty, each act of kindness, becomes part of the fabric. You wrap yourself in it as you drift into sleep, and in doing so, you prepare to meet the next day with a lighter spirit. To cultivate reflection, you do not need elaborate rituals. A candle lit before bed, a journal by your side, or even a simple practice of closing your eyes and breathing deeply can suffice. What matters is sincerity. Reflection is not about analyzing every detail or forcing insight. It is about meeting yourself where you are, with openness. Some nights you will uncover deep lessons. Other nights you will only find quiet. Both are valuable. Both are part of the practice. In the long journey of life, reflection becomes a way of honoring time. You acknowledge that each day matters, that each carries its own truth. You do not let them slip by unnoticed. You gather them, learn from them, and release them. Over months and years, this practice shapes you quietly. You become more thoughtful, more patient, more grounded. You stop repeating the same mistakes, not because you force yourself to change, but because you see them clearly and gently choose differently. So tonight, when the day draws to its close, give yourself this gift. Sit in silence, even for a few minutes. Ask yourself, what did today teach me? What can I let go of? What intention will guide me tomorrow? Hold the answers gently, without clinging. Then release the day, trusting that its lessons are planted like seeds in the soil of your being. And as you rest, know that reflection is not the end of growth, but its beginning. Each night you reflect, you prepare the ground for a new dawn, one that can rise with greater clarity, greater compassion, and greater peace. When reflection becomes a nightly practice, you begin to notice not only the events of the day, but also the subtle movements of the heart. You see how certain situations stirred restlessness, how others brought calm, how your responses shaped the texture of your experience more than the circumstances themselves. This awareness is powerful because it shifts responsibility inward. Instead of blaming the world for your agitation, you see how your own patterns contributed. Instead of waiting for conditions to be perfect, You realize you can change the way you meet them. Each evening's reflection becomes a gentle teacher, showing you how to live with more wisdom tomorrow. This practice is closely tied to the Buddhist teaching of mindfulness. The word for mindfulness, sati, carries the sense of remembering. It is not simply awareness of the present moment, but also the remembrance of how you wish to live. Reflection, at the end of the day, strengthens this remembrance. It reminds you of your values, your intentions, your aspirations. When you drift from them, reflection calls you back. When you honor them, reflection allows you to acknowledge and appreciate it. Over time, this cycle deepens your alignment, making mindfulness not just something you practice in meditation, but a way of being in daily life. There is a story of a young monk who asked his teacher how to progress quickly on the path. The teacher replied, "Each night, before you sleep, look back at your day. If you see that you acted with mindfulness, rejoice. If you see that you acted without it, resolve to do better. This is enough." The student looked disappointed and said, "Is that all?" The teacher smiled and answered, "If you do this every day for 10 years, you will know how rare and precious it is." The story reminds us that great progress is not found in dramatic gestures, but in quiet, consistent practice. Reflection, done faithfully, is one of those practices. Reflection also builds humility. As you review your day, you inevitably see moments when you fell short, a harsh word spoken, a choice made from fear, a moment of forgetfulness. Instead of denying or excusing these, you acknowledge them. This softens pride, reminding you that you are a work in progress, just like everyone else. And yet, this humility is paired with compassion. You see your mistakes, but you do not punish yourself. You recognize them as part of learning, as opportunities to grow. In this way, reflection cultivates both honesty and gentleness, two qualities essential to the Buddhist path. Think of how different this is from the way many people approach their days. Without reflection, mistakes linger in the mind as guilt or are buried under denial. Neither leads to growth. But with reflection, mistakes are acknowledged, forgiven, and transformed into lessons. The weight is lifted, and you step into tomorrow lighter, wiser. This is the beauty of ending the day with awareness. You do not carry the burdens forward. You release them, trusting that the lesson remains even as the heaviness fades. Reflection is not limited to what went wrong. It also highlights what went well. You notice the small victories, the moment you remained patient when you might have snapped, the kindness you offered a stranger, the way you chose presence over distraction. These moments often go unnoticed in the rush of life, but reflection brings them into the light. You see that you are not only a collection of mistakes, but also a collection of mindful choices. This recognition builds confidence and encouragement. It shows you that progress is real, even if subtle. Gratitude arises naturally in this process. When you look back, you begin to see how much the day offered you, even in its difficulties. A challenge becomes a teacher. A quiet moment becomes a source of rest. The presence of others, even in simple interactions, becomes a reminder of interconnection. Gratitude softens the heart, making it easier to forgive, easier to rest, easier to meet tomorrow with openness. In this way, reflection is not only a practice of clarity, but also of appreciation. Rumi once said, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Reflection trains you to do this. Some days will be bright, filled with ease and kindness. Others will be heavy, marked by impatience or sorrow. Reflection allows you to see both with grace. You do not cling to the bright days as though they must last forever. You do not despair on the heavy days as though they define you. You see them both as seasons, passing through, each carrying its own lesson. This acceptance brings peace, a peace that makes rest deeper and mornings lighter. To practice reflection, it helps to keep it simple. At night, before lying down, ask yourself 3 gentle questions. What am I grateful for today? What did I learn today? What intention will I carry tomorrow? These questions are like lanterns, illuminating the path. They do not demand perfection. They invite honesty and kindness. And the answers, however simple, weave a thread of awareness that carries forward into the next day. Over time, you will notice that reflection changes not only your nights, but also your days. Knowing that you will look back in the evening makes you more mindful in the moment. You begin to catch yourself before reacting harshly. Knowing you will face that moment later, you remember to savor small joys, knowing you will recall them with gratitude. Reflection becomes both a closure for the day and a guide for living more fully within it. The Buddha described the path to awakening as gradual, like the rising of dawn. At first, the horizon is dark. Then faint light appears. Then colors spread. Then the sun rises in full. Reflection is part of this dawn. Each night you reflect. You bring a little more light to the horizon of your awareness. Over months and years, that light grows until clarity shines more consistently in your life. So tonight, do not let the day vanish without pause. Do not fall into sleep, carrying its burdens blindly. Sit quietly, breathe deeply, and invite the day to speak. Listen, not with judgment, but with compassion. Then, when you are ready, let it go. Trust that the lessons remain, that gratitude softens what was heavy, and that intention lights the path forward. In this way, you end not only the day, but also a cycle of unconscious living. You end with awareness, with peace, with love. When reflection deepens, it begins to touch something beyond daily lessons. It becomes a way of connecting to the larger flow of life itself. You start to see that each day is not isolated, but part of a continuous unfolding. What you learned yesterday shapes today, and what you choose today shapes tomorrow. The boundaries between days begin to soften, and you see your life not as a collection of separate events, but as one ongoing practice. This recognition brings both humility and strength. Humility, because you realize how every moment matters. Strength, because you know that even small choices ripple far beyond what you can see. Buddhist practice often emphasizes continuity. The Buddha described existence as a stream. not a collection of separate drops. Just as the river flows, each moment leads to the next. Reflection allows you to step back and witness this stream more clearly. Without reflection, you may think of life as fragmented: this good day, that bad day, this success, that failure. With reflection, you begin to see the thread connecting them all. Even the difficult moments serve a purpose, weaving themselves into the fabric of your growth. There is a story of a disciple who asked his master, "How should I measure my progress?" The master replied, "Do not look at single days. Look at the direction of your life. If you are more compassionate today than yesterday, more patient this month than last, then you are walking well." Reflection teaches you to see in this way. Instead of being lost in the ups and downs of individual days, you observe the larger arc. You notice that while some nights bring frustration, over time, your heart softens, your patience deepens, your presence expands. This recognition keeps you steady on the path. Reflection also awakens the truth of impermanence. As you look back at the day, you see how fleeting each moment is. The laughter that felt so bright, the frustration that seemed so heavy, both have passed. This awareness changes your relationship to experience. You no longer cling desperately to pleasant moments, nor despair endlessly over painful ones. You see that all things come and go. This is not a reason for sadness, but for freedom. Impermanence means that every day is a new beginning. No mistake is permanent. No joy is wasted. Each moment is fresh, alive, and open to choice. When you bring impermanence into reflection, forgiveness becomes easier. You forgive yourself because you see that today's mistake does not define tomorrow. You forgive others because you realize their harsh words were only a passing storm. You let go of burdens more easily because you trust that nothing lasts forever. In this way, reflection becomes not just a practice of learning, but also a practice of liberation. Rumi once said, "Be like a tree, and let the dead leaves drop." Reflection allows you to do exactly this. Each night, you notice the dead leaves, the regrets, the mistakes, the worries, and you release them. You do not need to carry them into tomorrow. Let them fall, and in their place, new growth will come. Just as a tree is renewed with each season, you too are renewed with each dawn. Another gift of reflection is the way it cultivates compassion, not only for yourself, but for others. As you review your day, you may recall moments when someone spoke harshly or acted unkindly. Instead of clinging to resentment, reflection invites you to see more deeply. Perhaps they too were tired, distracted, or carrying unseen burdens. You remember that just as you falter, so do they. This recognition softens anger into understanding. Compassion grows naturally, not as a forced virtue, but as a lived reality. Over time, this compassion changes the way you live. You stop expecting perfection from yourself and from others. You meet mistakes with patience, difficulties with gentleness. Reflection shows you again and again that life is imperfect, yet still profoundly beautiful. This acceptance is not passive, it is active wisdom. It allows you to engage with life more fully, without being trapped by disappointment or regret. Reflection before rest also prepares the mind for deeper sleep. When you acknowledge the events of the day, release what no longer serves you, and carry forward only intention, the mind grows quieter. Instead of tossing in the restlessness of unresolved thoughts, you lie down with a sense of closure. Sleep becomes a continuation of practice, a time when the body restores and the mind integrates. You wake lighter, clearer, more present. In this way, reflection benefits not only the spirit, but also the body. The Buddha often compared the mind to a clear lake. When disturbed, the water ripples, and the reflection of the moon cannot be seen. When calm, the water mirrors the moon perfectly. Reflection at night is like letting the ripples settle. You stop stirring the water with endless thoughts and allow the mind to become still. In that stillness, clarity appears. You see the moon, your true nature shining in the quiet surface of the heart. So, how might you deepen this practice? Begin by setting aside a few minutes each night, even if only 5. Sit or lie down in silence. Close your eyes. Let the day replay gently, like clouds drifting across the sky. Observe without judgment. Smile at the moments of kindness. Acknowledge the moments of struggle. Then ask yourself, what can I release? What lesson can I carry forward? What intention will guide me tomorrow? Hold the answers lightly. Then let the day dissolve. If you keep a journal, you might write down one word or phrase from your reflection: gratitude, patience, letting go, kindness. Over time, these words form a map of your growth, reminders of the qualities you are cultivating. If you prefer silence, let the reflections rest in your heart. There is no single right way. What matters is sincerity. Reflection is not about achieving grand insights every night. Some nights will bring clarity, others only quiet. Both are valuable. What matters is consistency, like drops of water filling a jar. Each moment of reflection adds to the reservoir of awareness. Slowly, quietly, the jar fills. One day you look back and realize you are no longer the same. You are more awake, more compassionate, more at peace. So tonight, before you rest, pause. Do not rush past the closing of the day. Let it speak to you. Listen with patience. Release what must be released. Carry forward what nourishes. And then sleep. Not as one collapsing from exhaustion, but as one stepping into the arms of peace. Reflection is not only about letting go of the day, but also about planting seeds for tomorrow. The Buddha often compared the mind to a field. Whatever seeds are planted and watered will grow, whether they are seeds of greed, anger, and delusion, or seeds of kindness, patience, and wisdom. At night, when the day is ending, you stand at the edge of this field. You cannot change the seeds you watered today, but you can choose which ones you will nourish tomorrow. Reflection becomes the act of preparing the soil, clearing away weeds, and placing new seeds with care. When you pause before sleep to ask, What intention will guide me tomorrow? You are not creating a strict demand. You are setting a compass. Life will unfold unpredictably, but your compass will help you navigate with steadiness. Perhaps your intention is patience, or kindness, or focus. Whatever you choose, it becomes a quiet reminder, a thread to return to when distractions arise. Without such an intention, the day can scatter. With it, you move more purposefully, even through difficulty. This practice is simple yet transformative. Imagine waking each morning with no clear intention. Your attention is pulled in every direction: messages, tasks, worries. You end the day feeling busy, yet unfulfilled. Now imagine waking with a single, clear intention. Today, I will listen more deeply. Throughout the day, whenever noise threatens to overwhelm you, that intention returns. Like a compass pointing north, it shapes your choices, your responses, your presence. At night, when you reflect again, you see how that intention guided you. Even if you faltered, you had a direction. Over time, these small intentions accumulate, shaping the arc of your life. Buddhist teachings describe this process as cultivating wholesome states. The Abhidhamma, a detailed analysis of the mind, emphasizes that intention, or cetana, is the force that gives direction to consciousness. It is like the rudder of a boat. Without it, the boat drifts. With it, even gentle strokes of the oar carry you toward the shore. Reflection before rest allows you to set that rudder, ensuring that tomorrow's journey begins with clarity. There is a Zen story of a monk who ended each day by lighting a single candle. As he watched the flame, he would reflect on his actions and then whisper an intention for the next day. Tomorrow, I will be more gentle with my words. Or, tomorrow, I will rise without haste. Then he would blow out the candle and rest. This ritual, repeated for years, shaped his life not with dramatic vows but with small, steady commitments. You too can create such a ritual. The candle may be literal or symbolic, but the act of closing one day with reflection and opening the next with intention becomes a rhythm that carries you forward. Reflection also helps you see progress in ways that are often invisible. Growth is subtle. It rarely appears as sudden transformation. Instead, it comes in small shifts: a little more patience in traffic, a little more kindness in conversation, a little more presence in daily tasks. Without reflection, these changes may go unnoticed. You may think you are not improving, that you are still the same. But when you look back honestly, you see the difference. You remember how reactive you once were, how restless your mind once felt, and you realize that progress has indeed taken place. This recognition builds faith in the practice. It shows you that mindfulness works, that reflection matters. Rumi once said, "Be like a melting snow. Wash yourself of yourself." Reflection is this washing. It allows you to release the hardened layers of pride, regret, and illusion. Each night, you melt a little, becoming softer, clearer, more open. And in that melting, you make space for tomorrow's freshness. It is important to note that reflection does not mean clinging to self-improvement with tension. The Buddha warned against striving too tightly, comparing it to a lute string. If the string is too loose, it makes no sound. If it is too tight, it breaks. The same is true of practice. If you demand too much of yourself, you will grow weary. If you demand nothing, you will drift. Reflection helps you find the middle, to see where you are, to accept it, and to guide yourself gently forward without force. There will be nights when reflection feels difficult. Perhaps you do not want to face the mistakes of the day. Perhaps you feel restless or tired. On those nights, do not pressure yourself. Even a single breath taken with awareness is enough. The practice is not about quantity but sincerity. If you can sit quietly for one breath and acknowledge, this day has ended, you have already planted a seed of mindfulness. Tomorrow, that seed may grow into something more. Reflection before rest also fosters a deeper sense of responsibility. You begin to see that your life is shaped not by grand resolutions made once a year but by daily choices. Each day is a thread, and together they weave the fabric of your existence. To reflect each night is to tend carefully to that weaving, ensuring that the fabric is strong, beautiful, and aligned with your values. You realize that growth is not something to chase in the future, but something to practice now. In the ordinary rhythm of each day, the Buddha often reminded his followers that the path is walked step by step. Enlightenment does not arrive all at once. It is cultivated in the way you rise, the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you rest. Reflection keeps you attentive to these steps, ensuring you do not wander too far without noticing. It is both a closing and an opening, the closing of the day and the opening of awareness for tomorrow. So tonight, when you prepare for sleep, remember that reflection is not just about reviewing the past. It is also about shaping the future. Ask yourself gently, what seed will I plant tonight? What intention will I carry into the dawn? Let the answer be simple, sincere, and light. Then rest, trusting that even the smallest seed, planted with care, will one day bear fruit. As reflection matures, you begin to see that the practice is not confined to the minutes before sleep. Slowly, it seeps into the fabric of your days. You find yourself pausing after a conversation, noticing how your words landed. You pause while walking, realizing how your body feels. You pause in the middle of a busy task, asking yourself if you are still aligned with your intention. In this way, reflection becomes less of an evening ritual and more of a constant companion. It walks beside you, guiding you with a quiet hand, reminding you to live with awareness. The Buddha described mindfulness as recollection, a remembering to return again and again to the present. Reflection strengthens this remembering. At night, you look back at the day and see where you wandered. Then, during the day, the memory of your nightly reflections helps you notice sooner. You catch yourself in impatience before it grows into anger. You remember to breathe before rushing into a decision. This is how reflection transforms life, not by staying locked in the past, but by illuminating the present. There is a teaching from Zen that says, each step is the journey. Reflection helps you see that clearly. You begin to understand that growth is not something waiting for you at the end of years of practice. It is in the way you place your foot on the ground, the way you wash a dish, the way you speak to a stranger. Reflection makes these small moments visible. It shows you that every step is sacred when walked with awareness. As you continue, reflection also reveals deeper patterns. You begin to notice that your reactivity often follows the same triggers, that your distractions often arise from the same sources, that your joy often comes from the same simple experiences. These insights allow you to work more skillfully. Instead of treating each moment as separate, you recognize the larger cycles at play. You realize that irritation arises more often when you are tired. That distraction increases when you neglect silence. That kindness flows more easily when you begin the day with gratitude. With this knowledge, you can nurture the conditions that give rise to peace and reduce those that lead to suffering. Rumi once said, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Reflection teaches you this grace. You see how your mind shifts like weather, how joy and sorrow, focus and restlessness, clarity and confusion all come and go. Instead of clinging to the bright days or despairing over the heavy ones, you learn to meet them both with equanimity. This acceptance is not passivity. It is wisdom. It reminds you that you are not the storm itself, but the sky that holds it. The practice of reflection also fosters patience. Growth is rarely immediate. The habits of the mind are deep, and they take time to soften. Without reflection, it is easy to become discouraged, to think nothing is changing. But when you look back with awareness, you see the subtle shifts. You see how you are less reactive than before, more compassionate, more grounded. This recognition gives you the strength to continue. Even when progress feels slow, you realize that transformation is not dramatic but cumulative, built from countless small acts of awareness. In Buddhist tradition, monks and nuns often dedicate time at the end of the day to recite verses of reflection. These verses include confessions of faults, expressions of gratitude, and renewed vows of practice. The ritual is not about guilt or self-punishment, but about honesty and recommitment. It is a way of saying, "I see where I have wandered. I see where I have grown. I will continue with sincerity." You can adopt a similar spirit in your own practice. You may not chant verses, but you can pause each night to acknowledge your humanity, to forgive yourself, and to recommit gently to walking with awareness. Reflection, when carried deeply, also becomes a source of resilience. Life will bring storms, illness, loss, uncertainty, change. Without reflection, these storms can feel overwhelming, sweeping you into despair. With reflection, you are more grounded. You have trained yourself to look clearly, to accept impermanence, to release what cannot be controlled. This does not erase pain, but it transforms your relationship to it. Instead of drowning, you float. Instead of resisting, you flow. Reflection has prepared you for this by teaching you night after night, to meet life with both honesty and compassion. Consider how different life feels when you carry this resilience. Instead of fearing mistakes, you welcome them as teachers. Instead of clinging to control, you allow space for change. Instead of rushing endlessly, you pause to appreciate. Reflection gives you this gift, the ability to live, not in fear, but in trust. Not in blindness, but in clarity. In time, reflection becomes more than a practice. It becomes a way of being. You no longer need to force yourself to pause at night. It arises naturally. You no longer need to remind yourself to set intentions. They flow spontaneously. Life itself becomes your meditation cushion. Every moment, an opportunity to look, to learn, to release, to begin again. This is the fruit of consistent practice. What began as a few quiet minutes before bed blossoms into a way of living with awareness. The Buddha once told his followers, "Do not overlook small good deeds, thinking they are of no benefit. Even drops of water can fill a jar." Reflection is one of these small good deeds. Each night, it may feel like only a drop, but over weeks, months, and years, the jar fills. The mind becomes clearer, the heart softer, the spirit lighter. You look back and realize that the practice has transformed you, not in a sudden flash, but in the quiet accumulation of countless drops of awareness. So tonight, when you reflect, remember that you are not only reviewing a single day, you are adding a drop of clarity to the jar of your life. You are nurturing patience, compassion, and wisdom. You are weaving awareness into the fabric of your being. And though each drop may seem small, together they create an ocean of peace. In many ways, reflection before rest is like closing a sacred book at the end of the day. Each page is filled with moments, some joyous, some heavy, some so ordinary they may seem invisible. But when you pause to look back, you realize that every line matters. Every moment, no matter how small, is a verse in the story of your awakening. Without reflection, you close the book without reading, rushing to the next chapter without understanding the last. With reflection, you read slowly, absorbing the lessons, carrying them forward with reverence. Buddhist tradition often emphasizes the importance of remembering that the present moment is the only true home. Reflection at night strengthens this truth. By looking back with awareness, you are not clinging to the past. You are learning to see it clearly, to extract its wisdom, and to release what no longer serves. You do not drag yesterday's burdens into tomorrow, but you do carry its teachings. This balance, carrying wisdom but not weight, is the essence of mindful living. Consider how this practice changes the way you meet your mornings. Without reflection, you wake up already entangled in the leftover energy of the previous day. Your mind is still replaying arguments, still worrying about tasks unfinished, still restless from unprocessed emotions. But with reflection, you end the day lighter. You have already acknowledged, released, and set intention. You wake with a clearer heart, ready to meet the new day as it is, not as an extension of the old one. This is why reflection is not only about looking back, but also about preparing forward. The Buddha taught that the mind precedes all things. If your last thoughts before sleep are restless, your dreams and waking state often carry that restlessness. But if your last thoughts are of gratitude, clarity, and intention, the mind rests more deeply, and the morning begins with greater peace. In this way, reflection shapes not just the close of the day but the opening of the next. There is a story from the Buddhist texts of a monk who, each night, would ask himself 3 questions. What have I done today with body, speech, and mind? Did it lead to harm or to peace? What will I do differently tomorrow? These simple questions guided his practice for decades. By the end of his life, his heart was light, for he had not allowed a single day to pass without awareness. You may not use the same questions, but the principle is universal. Reflection brings accountability, but not harshness. It brings clarity, but not despair. It keeps the practice alive. Reflection also nurtures a deeper intimacy with yourself. Many people move through life without truly knowing themselves. They know their roles, their duties, their external identities, but they do not pause to listen to their inner world. Reflection is that pause. It is the moment when you turn inward and ask, how am I really? Over time, this question dissolves masks and illusions. You see yourself more honestly, your strengths, your weaknesses, your longings, your fears, and in this honesty, compassion arises. You stop demanding perfection. You start honoring your humanity. This intimacy extends outward as well. As you grow more compassionate with yourself, you become more compassionate with others. You realize that just as you struggle, so do they. Just as you falter, so do they. Reflection makes the heart softer, more open. It shows you that everyone is walking their own path of learning. This realization deepens empathy, reminding you that no one is separate, that we are all part of the same unfolding. Rumi once wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul with grace." Each night, when you reflect, you see those seasons. You see days when the soul is bright with joy, and days when it is clouded with sorrow. You see days when patience blossoms easily, and days when frustration dominates. Reflection allows you to accept these changes without resistance. It teaches you that life is not meant to be uniform, but to ebb and flow. Like the tide, grace comes not from controlling the tide, but from moving with it. Another aspect of reflection is the cultivation of equanimity. Equanimity is the ability to remain steady in the face of both joy and sorrow, success and failure. Without reflection, the mind clings to joy and resists sorrow, swinging constantly between highs and lows. With reflection, you learn to see both with balance. You recognize that joy is impermanent, so you savor it without clinging. You recognize that sorrow is impermanent, so you bear it without despair. Each night, by reviewing the day with calm awareness, you strengthen this steadiness. Over time, equanimity becomes not just an idea, but a lived reality. Practical rituals can help anchor this practice. You might keep a simple journal, writing a few lines about what you learned. You might light incense or a candle, marking the close of the day with a gesture of reverence. You might simply sit in silence, resting on your lap, breathing deeply as you let the day pass before your inner eye. These rituals signal to the mind and body that the day is complete. They invite closure, which is often missing in modern life, where one day bleeds into the next without pause. Reflection is also a way of returning home. Throughout the day, the mind is scattered outward to tasks, to people, to endless stimuli. At night, reflection gathers these scattered pieces, bringing them back to the center. You come home to yourself. You remember that beneath all the roles and distractions, there is a quiet awareness that is always present. Touching this awareness before rest is like returning to a safe harbor. No matter how stormy the day has been, you end in stillness. The Buddha often described the mind as luminous by nature, only obscured by passing clouds of ignorance and craving. Reflection is the act of watching those clouds drift by. You see where they thickened, where they thinned, where the light shone through. And as you observe, you realize that the clouds are not the essence of the sky. They pass. The sky remains. In the same way, your mistakes and triumphs, your joys and sorrows, are clouds. Reflection reminds you of the sky. So, as you prepare for rest tonight, imagine closing the book of the day. Turn the pages slowly, reading with care. Acknowledge what was written, even the lines you wish were different. Then close the book gently, placing it on the shelf of memory. You need not carry it in your hands while you sleep. Trust that the lessons remain, that the story continues tomorrow, and that you are always free to write anew. When we step back and look at the whole arc of this journey, it becomes clear that self-improvement in Buddhism is never about chasing an idealized version of ourselves. It is not about becoming flawless, nor about meeting the endless demands of the world. It is about realignment, returning again and again to what is essential. Every practice we have reflected on, from beginning the morning with intention, to carrying one guiding purpose, to breaking old patterns gently, to protecting our energy, shaping our environment, embracing discipline as love, and closing the day with mindful reflection. Each of these is a thread in the same tapestry. Together, they weave a life lived not in pressure, but in presence. Think of how differently life feels when lived this way. Instead of rushing into the morning with distraction, you rise with clarity. Instead of scattering your attention across dozens of tasks, you carry one intention that keeps you grounded. Instead of breaking yourself in order to change, you break the pattern instead, making space for gentler rhythms. Instead of exhausting yourself by managing time, you learn to honor energy, working with its natural flow. Instead of surrounding yourself with noise and clutter, you cultivate spaces, both outer and inner, that breathe with simplicity. And instead of seeing discipline as a cage, you begin to recognize it as devotion. the way you express love for yourself and for the life you are shaping. All of these practices culminate in reflection, the quiet pause before rest. Without it, days blur into each other, unexamined, unreleased. With it, each day becomes a lesson, each night an offering of closure. You meet yourself honestly, forgive yourself gently, and prepare yourself for the next dawn with gratitude and intention. Slowly, the cycles of restlessness dissolve, replaced by cycles of clarity. You begin to see that transformation does not happen in dramatic leaps, but in these small, consistent acts of awareness. The Buddha often emphasized this truth. He said that just as the ocean deepens gradually, so too does wisdom. It is not sudden, not immediate, but steady, drop by drop. Each breath taken in mindfulness, each act of kindness, each choice made with care, all of these drops fill the jar of awakening. The mind does not need to chase perfection. It only needs to stay present, to keep returning, to keep beginning again. Rumi's words echo this. Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. These practices we have explored are not about resisting life or forcing it to bend to our will. They are about flowing with it, gently, gracefully, mindfully. They are about creating the conditions where peace arises naturally, where wisdom blossoms quietly, where joy reveals itself without being chased. And so, when you look at self-improvement through this lens, it ceases to be a burden. It becomes a form of love. Love expressed in the way you rise, in the way you speak, in the way you pause, in the way you rest. Love expressed not as indulgence, but as devotion, a devotion to your own awakening, and, by extension, to the peace you bring into the world. For every mindful act you cultivate in yourself ripples outward. Your calm presence steadies others. Your kindness softens others. Your discipline inspires others. In this way, your practice is never for you alone. It is a gift to all beings. Life will always bring storms. There will be mornings of haste, days of distraction, evenings of regret. But now you know storms pass. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to return. To pause, to breathe, to reflect, to begin again. Each return is progress. Each return is enough. The Buddha did not ask us to be saints overnight. He asked us to walk step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment, with sincerity. That sincerity is what transforms. So, as this journey comes to a close, let us return to the beginning. Every single day is a quiet invitation to rise not through pressure, but through presence. To rise by remembering who you are beneath the noise. To rise by living with awareness, with compassion, with clarity. When you build mornings that nourish, when you carry one intention, when you break harmful patterns, when you guard your energy, when you shape your environment with care, when you honor discipline as love, and when you reflect before rest, you are not just improving yourself, you are remembering yourself. You are coming home. Tonight, As you prepare to sleep, carry this truth with you. Growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to your true self. More awake, more alive, more at peace. Trust in the power of small acts, of daily rhythms, of mindful pauses. Trust that each breath, each step, each choice plants a seed, and trust that, with patience and compassion, those seeds will blossom in their own time. May your mornings be clear. May your days be mindful. May your nights be peaceful. May you continue to walk gently, steadily, and lovingly on this path of awakening.